June 1st, 2021 at 1 p.m. And this is the regular quarterly meeting of the Montana Board of Investments. Call the meeting to order and remind people that the meeting is being recorded. And Lindsay, would you do the roll call, please?
Thing. Carl England,
Here.
Jack Prothero,
Here.
Jeff Greenfield,
Here.
Terry Cohey,
Here.
Bruce Nelson,
Here.
Diane Fladmo,
Here.
Maggie Peterson,
Here.
Mark Berry,
Here.
Jeff Meredith,
Here.
Senator Ryan Osmondson,
Here.
Representative Ken Walsh. Oh, he was here earlier, but it looks like he's not back on yet. But we do have 9 board members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Are there any public comments on issues within the board jurisdiction? You'll tell me if anybody online is raising their hand. Anyone in the room? If not, we are behind tab 1. We have minutes of the April 20th, 2021 meeting. Everybody had a chance to review them. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. And before I go on to the next item, obviously we have 2 new legislative liaisons. Senator Robinson is here. Representative Walsh is going to join us tomorrow. So I think we'll let you introduce yourselves to us and when Representative Walsh is here. Is that all right? Certainly. Okay. All right. Administrative business, audit committee reports. Maggie.
Okay, we met this morning and there were just a few things on our agenda. One thing I want to, Executive Villa talked to us about some things that were going on. We talked about gone through the first stage of the SOC audit. We talked about our accounting staff putting together an automated portion of the financial statements, and that's just tables and numbers. They'll still have to work on the notes and stuff, of course. We discussed the first deposit of the ARPA funds, ARPA funds, and I'm going to tell you what that stands for because I had to look it up. It stands for American Rescue Plan Act funds. And those funds are allocated for critical capital projects directly enabling work, education, and health monitoring in response to COVID. So I didn't know, so I didn't know if anybody else didn't know what those funds were. He said we received about 450 million. Is that correct? And we're expecting to receive more, maybe up to 1.2 billion, possibly. And then we moved on to updating actually Director Villa talked about some things that are going on in our accounting area with the staff and whatnot. We were all present, so I don't think I need to go over that again, really. We looked at the charter and added some language called the Audit Committee Charter. We added some language as requested by board member Mark Berry, and that's language that says we will review on an annual basis the board's COOP plan. So the committee voted to approve that. And Dan, do I have to have the full board approve that? So I would make a motion that we approve the charter as amended, the audit committee charter as amended.
Mark?
Oh, you moved?
I moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Comments? If not, all in favor of approving the the changes to the audit committee chair charter?
You almost fired her.
Yeah.
How about the chair of the board?
Senator Robinson, see what I mean?
Get unruly.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously.
Next thing we did is Julie Feldman updated the audit committee, what do we call it, checklist. Talked about the fact that it's a financial audit this year, and they were going to be taking a look at the CARES fund. They'll do it all at one time, how we manage the CARES fund. Board member Barry asked about financial versus compliance, and Julian reminded us that they do financial and compliance both on even years, and otherwise it's just financial. It doesn't mean they can't do compliance on the off years, but they can. They usually don't. She talked about GASB statements, and I don't know if I need to go over those again, that we're going to be implemented in 2021. GASB 90 is a majority equity interest. That's the topic, and it doesn't impact us, so because we don't own 50% of any entity. GASB 93, it's called replacement of interbank offered rates or LIBOR, and it doesn't apply to us at this time either, so. There was an implementation guide. Currently, it doesn't impact the board, but it looks like and then she went on to talk about fiscal year 22. There'll be GASB 87, which has to do with leases, and that will impact us. We will need to provide disclosure material to agencies which lease one of our buildings, reported as direct holdings with the trust fund investment pool for inclusion in their financials. And we'll also need to include additional disclosures within both our financial statements as a lessor and a leasee. She talked about the custodial and trustee bank rating review. So both banks and trustee banks were reviewed for at least by two nationally recognized statistical rating organizations, and both were within governance policy requirements. Let's see, and we moved on to the governance policy. And what we did throughout that policy, we basically eliminated reference to deputy chief investment officer, and continuity of chief investment officer duties. Changed the hierarchy, went from deputy director to, I believe, the executive director. Is that right?
Motion on that one.
Yes, we did. So I would move that we, the committee did approve that change, and I would move that the full board accept that change. Second.
Okay. It's moved and seconded to approve the changes in the governance manual that were approved by the committee and that are behind the tab for the audit committee. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
That's
None?
my report.
All right, Jack, loan committee.
Hey, loan committee met earlier. I just, for the record, like to say that on this part of the presentation, it's a little less detailed, but the loan committee does take a lot of time and asks a lot of questions on these loans. That's the purpose of the committee. So we do spend a lot of time on those. Today, we looked at a couple of requests from the Montana Finance Facility Authority, and to present a couple things that will come as a recommendation from loan committee. I'm pleased to introduce Adam Gill, who's the executive director, and just on a real high level, Adam, if you talk just what we do here with these two, and then two short things on the credits.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to present and the opportunity earlier today to go into greater detail. So speaking very generally, the Master Loan Program we have with the Montana Board of Investments provides a loan guarantee to well-run small hospitals so they can access low-cost loans at a much better rate than they would if they went out there on their own. The guarantee is backed by a debt service reserve, and at no point in the $272 million in funds that have gone out through Master Loan has ever there been a need to pull on that reserve. In the event there was a need to pull on the reserve, the authority would borrow the money from the Board of Investments to refill it, but only after tapping our own reserves to cover that first. So this is something we've been very happy to do. It's got a number of great projects. If you go just 2 blocks south, you'll see Children's Hospital, the frame for the steel frame for that going up. That is a $20 million project we financed with Master Loan just last year. I'm looking forward to the replacement facility built with that. So $272 million financed under Master Loan over the last nearly 30 years now. Of course, Board of Investments receives a guarantee fee. Historical average is about 135 basis points. So that financing so far, Board of Investments received 3.6 million in guarantee fees historically. And now for the two projects in front of you today, speaking very generally, Marcus Daly Memorial Hospital Hamilton is putting in a new procedure in an endoscopy space, as well as a new clinic in Stevensville. Community Hospital of Anaconda is putting an oncology and infusion space in, as well as some other renovations. Both of these facilities are among the best rural hospitals in Montana. Both regularly are in places one of the top 100 critical access hospitals in the United States, placing them in the top 5% of critical access hospitals in the country. They're well run, they're well managed, and both are in fantastic financial condition to take on this additional debt.
Great. Is there any questions from anybody in the room or on Zoom that we could answer for you? Adam could answer for you. If not, there's two different loan requests. They have been approved by the loan committee. All the board members were there. And but we do have to formally approve them here at the full board too. So we'll take them one at a time. One is a request from Marcus Daly Memorial Hospital. And so coming from the finance committee, I'd make a motion to approve that request as submitted.
Second.
Here.
Moved and seconded. Discussed in great detail during the loan committee. Any other comments or questions from anyone? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I do want to note for the record that there's absentee people recuse themselves on this loan and the Anaconda one. I don't know if you want that in the record here or.
Well, the Marcus Daly one, there wasn't one. I think on Anaconda,
No, it was the fire district.
Yep.
right, in Anaconda, Mr. Villa did not participate in the discussion because the Villas are in charge of everything in Anaconda.
Just the Dairy Queen in the hospital, that's all we got.
All right, with that note, and the disclosure, the second request that the loan committee looked at was for the Community Hospital of Anaconda. And so coming from the loan committee, I'd make a motion to approve that request as submitted.
Second.
Yeah, again, any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and then a couple disclosures for this meeting. Thank you, Adam. Intercap loan had two requests for the loan committee. The first one was the Lockwood Rural Fire District from Billings. They're borrowing $2,760,000 to refinance their fire station and pay off a bank loan, and it'll substantially save them some money. So we don't need a vote on that, but that's a full disclosure for the record. And then the second request was a similar one for the Fort Ellis Fire Station, which is by Bozeman, and you want to know Bruce's.
Bruce recused himself from considering that because his brother-in-law is on the board, chairman of the board of the Fort Ellis Fire Service Area. And so that request was for $3 million to construct a new fire station. There was some requirements that are part of the approval to make sure that everything is properly done to mitigate the risk for the board. And so the loan committee did approve that also. And then finally, the loan committee, we redid part of our loan policy program. We had a couple small revisions, nothing substantive. And they were primarily to make sure in policy we were doing what we were actually doing in practice. And so it was to drop a couple requirements from our lenders
to submit some forms to the bank. We get them in a different packet when they work with us, and it does not increase any risk at all for the board. So again, from loan committee, I'd make a motion to the full board to approve those loan policy revisions as submitted.
Okay, so is there a second?
Second.
So the motion and seconded is to approve the changes to the approved lender application policy that are behind the tab for the loan committee. Any discussion, comments, questions? If not, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And that's the loan committee report, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Human Resources, Terry.
The Human Resource Committee met this morning and went over the salaries for our 11 exempt positions. It's our duty to set those salaries for exempt staff. The salaries of classified staff are set under the state pay plan. And so I would move to approve the exempt staff salary adjustments as recommended by the HR committee and as shown on the spreadsheet.
Second.
Long, again, everyone was present, long discussion about this. Any further questions or discussion from anyone? Comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously. Terry?
Second motion, I move to approve the exempt staff job descriptions as attached in tab 2 and as recommended by the HR committee.
Thank you. Those were behind the HR committee tab.
Correct.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the exempt staff job descriptions that are behind the tab marked H.
I think is it? It's
marked
the
H-
HR.
committee.
HR committee.
It's the white tab 3, not the colored tab 3. This is HR.
Mine says HR committee, it doesn't have
Oh.
a number.
Well, you have a special one because you're the chair.
Oh,
Special too.
because I need remedial.
Mine's just like,
I need remedial. Mine, everything has to be. And there was a change in one, is that
No,
6
Yes.
to 7.
6 to
Yes,
7?
I'm
as
sorry,
modified.
as amended or as recommended by the committee.
Right, recommended by the committee, and
Yeah.
that's different than the printed ones in the executive director supervised 7 exempt staff. now. All right, with that, does everybody understand? Even without the remedial tabs, everybody understand? Okay, any additional comments, questions? If not, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. TRS and PERS board members. Jeff, you want to do
Yes, thank you,
TRS
Carl.
report?
TRS board met last on the 7th of this month. We went over a little bit of legislation that had passed. We generally have what we would call a cleanup bill, trying to clarify some issues with regard to teachers' retirement system. That bill passed. It basically changed the minimum required distribution age from 70 to 72 to match current law, and also clarified when someone has the option to take cash in lieu of benefits, that those expressly are exempt from being reported to TRS to augment your retirement. So that clarified the issue that we had. We did talk about several other bills that may or may not impact TRS going forward. One of those, of course, House Joint 8, study of the financial stability of the pension systems. So clearly, TRS board would have an interest in that. Just wanted to mention that and bring it forward. We talked about our budget for the year. We've been talking about an internal auditor for probably a decade. And we're finally to a point where we're going to try and add that FTE into the system so we can finally match what PRS is kind of doing on that saves some issues down the road if you catch things in advance instead of years and years down the road saying, oh, why didn't you report these 22 jobs to this? And now we've got 6 years of back issues to worry about. So hopefully that's going to pan out. Almost all of the increase to our budget was for that new FTE. A very small percentage was for the rest of the operations. We're, I think, statutorily required to spend 3% or less on management. So for our budget, we're at about 2.1% because of this new FTE. That's how much the increase was. But with the projects, we've been doing a lot of website and functionality work over the last at least 10, maybe 12 years. We've got to a point now to where we're just adding small portions to it. A lot of that's going to be coming off the books. And so we'll probably be back down to about 1.2% instead of, below that 3% cap. And that should be within the next year. So running very efficiently and still get that really good product in my mind. We're going to next meet on August 5th. We also talked about interest rate. That was an interesting discussion. We have to assign an interest rate that members earn each year. It's an annual change. And for those who get vested and then stop teaching for whatever reason and want to withdraw their funds, this is how you calculate each year how much interest they make. You hate to think of this as an interest rate, and sadly, probably too high, but we did settle on 0.25% for fiscal year 22. Again, that seems just ridiculous, but you aren't going to get that on the cash. So good deal for our members, I guess. But sadly. There's going to be a new community college in Bitterroot Valley, so that's going to be a new TRS contributor. I don't know why I wrote a note about this particular statute about First Judicial District in their county. I think it has to do with bringing up those new schools or community colleges. That's what I get for writing this 3 weeks ago and not looking.
That's the,
So that's the,
that's the new statute that allows them to challenge, when you get judicial challenges to benefit calculations, they used to have to bring it to the First Judicial District.
right.
They can now bring that in
To their-
any judicial
right.
district, so you're gonna get hometowned a lot more.
Yep. Thanks for
That
that.
doesn't happen.
And so for us, for contested, for those damn lawyers, no, sorry. Yeah, that concludes my.
All right.
On that note.
Well, now that we've done the requisite amount of banishing, Maggie, anything from,
Well, mine is very short and sweet. We have not met.
all
We're
right,
meeting next week. We have, on Wednesday, we have a audit committee, and then we'll have our meeting on Thursday. Are you attending
Yes.
to give your presentation to the board? So Dan, will- the executive director,
All
will
right.
be there. So,
next on our agenda, Sender, is time we set aside to hear any comments from our board liaisons. I don't know if Representative Walsh
He's not on.
is on, and we'll, so the first thing, this isn't your comment, it's ours, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, and it's good to have you, and we value your participation. I know there's when we've had some, in the past, we've had some legislative liaison that sort of thought maybe they were just here to learn or,
You could just say get stock tips.
get stock tips or something. But, as far as we're concerned, you're a member of the board. We look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward particularly to hearing from you if we're about to do something that you think is going to get us in trouble with your colleagues at the legislature. So, and with that, the floor is yours if you have anything to say.
Well, again, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and to your first point, I do look forward to just learning, frankly. You know, we talk about the Board of Investments in the legislature a lot, but not having, you know, really participated with this board much at all, I look forward to understanding what you do and how you do it. And as Jack and I were talking about, you know, perhaps the legislative liaison position can bring some knowledge back to the legislature, because oftentimes there is a misnomer of what's done here at times as well. So I hope to do the best that I can in that regard.
Oh, great, great. All right, tab 2.
Mr. Chairman,
Dan,
members, we sent out the new continuation of operations and internal control plan from May. The budget stat or the monthly snapshot is attached. I'm not going to make any comments about performance up year to date because that would jinx it, and we are in June. So I'm just going to leave that there, and we'll report back on the fiscal year in August. Budget status year to date. The report that's in your binder is as of May 11th. We were 88% through the fiscal year with about 80% of the budget expended. So we're right on track. A lot of that savings is attributable to lack of travel for this year. Typically, we have substantial due diligence travel that we do with our fund managers. Hasn't taken place. We bumped some of that money over into technology, not only to help us become a little bit more efficient, but longer term, maybe draw down on that travel commitment where we can. But certainly, we're not going to shortchange that at all. The most important decision that staff makes on the asset allocation you give us is manager selection. It's something we take very seriously, and we'll continue to do whatever we need to do to make sure we're putting the money in the right places. I am required to report to you on LPAC cost reports, and since last July, we haven't traveled to 80, so there's no expenses to report to you, but I'm sure that that will change in September and October. Just a reminder, we are going to hard open the office September 7th. We're still in our reopening plan was April. Supervisors were welcome to come back to the office if they felt safe to do so. We had mask protocols and all of that in place. All staff were welcome back May 1st. Again, based on their own personal preferences, childcare needs, healthcare needs, and then we're doing a hard reopening September 7th. About 80% of staff chose to participate or chose to come back to work without setting any sort of threshold of minimum. So I'm very happy with how it's gone. Staff has been respectful in making sure that they abide by the safety protocols. So we're in a pretty good spot as far as reopening goes. Travel will again commence following September 7th out of state.
questions for Dan or John about reopening? It went okay, huh?
It better than I would have thought.
Yeah.
How many approved FTE?
32. There's 32 total in the board. And then very quickly, Mr. Chairman, a couple of introductions. We do have our 2 interns who have started, Oliver Moon and Derek Thompson. Their names on the screen. So they're in the office, so you can wander down there, just down the hall at the far end or right outside where the central conference room used to
Put
be.
your pictures up.
Will you 2 turn your camera on so the board can see you? There you are. Sticking with the chief investment officer's tradition, they're both from MSU because apparently there's no other colleges in Montana that you will hire from.
Can we have a discussion of that?
Yeah. And then also joining us is Rebecca Power. She is with the Legislative Services Division. She'll be taking over for Sherry Skur, who used to have the board and pension systems. So we're happy to welcome her on board as well. Hello, Rebecca. And other than that, Mr. Chair, just happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Questions? If not, then we can turn to tab 3 and do our periodic top to bottom review, or top to bottom review of the in-state loan program. Doug, you're on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. What you have in front of you here is just a presentation of the in-state loan programs. So if you go to the page 2, you'll see the topics of today's discussion. I'll be talking about the Coltax trust loan programs, the residential mortgage program. We'll look a little bit at performance and then a summary. Before I get started in the presentation, there is a small error on some of the dates. I tried to insert April 31st, but I was told there is no such thing. So if you see April 31st, it's actually April 30th. So going on to page 3.
No, some of them have 30, some of them have 31, and then by the time you figure it out, they throw in that one that's only 20.
So on page 3, the current Coltax trust programs that I work with are the participation, the infrastructure, the value added, the intermediary relending program, or IRP for short, the Veterans Home Loan Program, the multifamily home loan program. We have Montana Facility Finance Authority, and then the science and technology portfolio. So going on to page 4, we'll talk about the participation loans. And if you do have any questions on any of the slides, feel free to interrupt me and I'll go into more detail. So the participation loans are made in participation with lenders who will service the loans. It's the largest program that I work with. And the board can participate up to 80% of a loan or 100% of a government guaranteed amount. So depending if the loan has a government guarantee or not, that kind of dictates the percentage that I will participate. I provide fixed rate financing for up to 25 years and 35 years if it's a guaranteed loan. So that's a big benefit to the businesses to be able to fix their interest rate for a long period of time. My interest rate, go ahead.
The slide says 30 years if guaranteed. Is it 30 or 35?
30. We'll go up to 30 years if it's a guaranteed loan.
Okay. Thank you.
The interest rate index that we use is the Federal Home Loan Bank. It's the Des Moines long-term interest rate, and the rates change weekly. It's every Thursday we have a new interest rate. We do have job creation credit that may reduce the interest rate up to 2.5%. So it's an encouragement to the businesses to create jobs to get a lower interest rate on the loan. And currently we have 48 loans in the portfolio, totaling about 103.3 million in principal as of March 31st, and the yield is 2.47%. So if no one has any questions on that program, I'll move on to page 5. And this is just a snapshot of our rate sheet. So commercial interest rates adjust weekly and are indexed at the Federal Home Loan Bank. Plus we add a margin or a spread ranging from 2.25 to 2.75 for non-guaranteed monthly participations. Guaranteed loans are priced a little bit better. They're 40 basis points lower. Essentially, we have no risk when we purchased the government guaranteed portion of a loan. Going on to page 6.
Doug, question for you on page 5. So
Sure.
who or how do we establish, or how do you establish that spread from 225 to 275? What's determining that decision?
Well, that spread has been in place for as long as I've been here at the board, which has been the last 5 years. But I think typically what we're looking at is to see if we're competitive. And I believe our rates are competitive, in the market. But like I said, we have not made any changes to those spreads in the last 5 years.
So ultimately, you decide on a weekly basis what the spread should be within that range to produce your rate sheet for the week.
Yeah, and actually, we don't change that spread on a weekly basis. That spread has been set. So what we do is we go out and look at the index that we're using, which is at the Federal Home Loan Bank. And then we add our spreads, which we've been using for many years, to those indexes to arrive at our.
Okay, I see. So the spread is 225 to 275, and it's varying by the term.
Correct.
Okay, and those have been fixed for some time. Okay, thank you.
That's correct. Okay. So on to page 6, the infrastructure loan program. We have up to 80 million of the trust is available for that program. The maximum loan size equals $16,666 times the number of jobs created. The minimum loan size is $250,000. And the board lends directly to local government entities, be it a city, a county, a port authority, or an economic development organization. And then the business for which the infrastructure is provided must create at least 15 full-time jobs. And it must be a basic sector business, which is over 50% of their revenue has to be generated outside of the state of Montana, or they need to be a first of a kind business in the state of Montana to meet the basic sector requirement. And then the business pays the local government a use fee to repay the loan. And then the use fee is pledged to the board. And then the use fee is credited against the Montana income taxes of the business. So that's the big benefit for the businesses to participate in the infrastructure loan, is that they get that credit against their Montana income tax liability. They also get the job creation credit that may reduce the interest rate up to 2.5%. We currently have 9 loans totaling just about 15 million as of March 31st. And then the yield in that program is 3.94%. So any questions? Yes.
So the 2.5, it says up to 2.5%. So how many jobs, is that associated with how many jobs are created over the 15 or what? How do you determine that?
So the 2.5% is if the business was to create 50 jobs that paid the private annual wage, they would get a 2.5% reduction in the interest rate. And those jobs have to be created as a result of our loan.
So
Go ahead.
what happens, because your minimum loan is 250,000 is associated with the 15 jobs, because you divide that by 15 and you come up with the 16,666.
Right.
So what happens if they drop down to 10 jobs after 6 months?
They have to create the jobs within 4 years of the date of the loan. And so during that 4-year period, I have to check to make sure that they've created the 15 jobs. If they haven't created the 15 jobs, then they may have to pay down the principal balance of the loan to equal the number of jobs that they created. And then in regards to the interest rate reduction, if we've given them a credit for the number of jobs that they've created and the number of jobs is reduced, we may have to adjust their interest rate down or up, depending if they've lost jobs or if they've created more jobs. So it's something that we monitor.
And this is one of those places where our ability to recover the principal lent plays in. So let's take an example, last year, real issues we dealt with. Not necessarily within the infrastructure program, but within our programs where we had either an interest rate or some other buy down. If that, when a business is struggling, if we up their interest rate while they're down, we're less likely to have them perform, and we put all of the capital at risk. So there are some instances where we have to use the flexibility afforded within policy to make sure we get that principal recovered. What we did last year is we did deferments, but then had a balloon payment at the end in order to make up that difference. So there's, you know, the how we implement this. What we don't want to do is lose the principal and the interest that we get paid by ramping up at the moment they don't, the EB-5s don't show that they're in compliance.
Kick them while they're down. You don't want to do that.
Exactly.
Fortunately, we haven't had many situations where the business has reduced the number of jobs, but it could happen.
Bruce?
Yeah, Doug, just to clarify, so it works like that during the 4-year period that they have to create the jobs. Does it work the same way on an ongoing basis after the 4 years? In other words, do you have to monitor that they don't get to 4 years, have the jobs, but then a year later don't?
Yeah, for the job creation piece, as far as the loan amount within the infrastructure loan, we just have to view that during that 4-year period. So if they tell us they're going to create 15 jobs and they create 15 jobs within that 4-year period, they've met the requirement and we don't have to check that again. But we do have to check for the interest rate reduction. So if we're going to give them a reduction in the interest rate, we want to check them periodically to make sure that they still have the number of jobs that they created and that we, you know, the amount that we reduce their interest rate by. And it works the other way too. If they created more jobs, then we're going to give them a larger credit and a lower interest rate on their loan. So.
Okay, up to a maximum of 2.5%.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
How often you seeing these, Doug?
Infrastructure loans? Usually one a year is kind of what it's averaged out since I've been here. It's a challenging program because it requires the government entities, the business, me, typically a bank. And so it's one that it's a great tool if it's can be used, but I don't see it very often.
Maggie, did you have a question?
So the 2.5%, is that tied a certain amount per FTE?
Yeah, to get a job credit you have to pay, it has to be a created job that pays the private annual wage, which is currently $44,100. So if they show that they've created a job that pays that, they get a 5 basis points reduction in their interest rate.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions on infrastructure before I move on?
Doesn't appear to be, Doug.
Okay, so move on to the next slide, which is on page 3, is the value-added loan program. The value-added loan program, there's $70 million available in the trust under this program. The minimum loan size is $250,000. Maximum term is 15 years. Jobs must be created by the value-added business. So the interest rate, which is set in statute, is contingent upon the number of jobs created or retained. So if you created 15 jobs or retained 15 jobs, the first 5 years is at 2%. If it's 10 jobs or less, it's 4% for the first 5 years. Then the interest rate in the second 5 years is 6%. And then the remaining 5 years is the standard posted rate. And the board participates in 75% of the lender's loan. It's a little different than the participation, which is at 80%. Probably the one thing that stops most businesses from wanting to do this loan is that they cannot pay dividends or bonuses to the owners while the loan is outstanding. And so currently we have no loans in the program. And I think the big thing there, as far as probably why we don't have loans, is because the interest rates are good during the first 5 years if you create those 15 jobs. But the rates are not competitive with, say, my participation program, where you can fix it for a much longer term than 5 years. So no balances within that program right now. Okay.
Those,
Yes.
those interest rates are set in law?
Yes. This program came about during the time period where the timber industry and the mills and that were struggling. And so this program was developed during that time period. And it did have, a fair amount of activity in it during that time periods, but as interest rates got lower, this program got used less and less. Okay, so moving on to page 8 is the Intermediary Relending Program, or IRP for short. And that program has 10 million of the trust available. The maximum loan size is 500,000. There's no lender involved. The board lends directly to the Economic Development Organization. The Economic Development Organization must match our loan with other government funds, typically USDA, and the match is 1-to-1 or greater. The interest rate is capped at 2% for the 30-year term. And that, again, that interest rate is in statute. The loan has interest payments only for the first 3 years, and then principal and interest over the remaining 27 years. And currently we have 34 loans totaling 4.47 million principal outstanding. and the yield on that program is at 2%. Any questions on that program?
Yeah, Doug, I have a question. This kind of ties into the last one too. For these programs that have rates that are set in stone, so to speak, do we ever provide feedback to the legislature on the competitiveness of those loans and kind of suggest any sort of changes? Or do we just let these kind of ebb and flow in their competitiveness against market rates?
Dan, do you want to
Yeah.
address that question?
So we get hit on both sides on these loan programs because we get hit from the trust side of maximize the returns, which in this case would otherwise go to the general fund and the state treasury. Or on the business side, if we lend it out at a rate lower than what we're earning, the economic development agencies or the businesses want it because then they keep the interest in addition to the 2% themselves and create a new revolving loan fund at the local level. So we sort of stay out of advising whether or not a program is good or bad at any one particular point in time because value added was good when interest rates were higher and there was a place to go for capital. Now we're sort of in the reverse where value added isn't all that great, but the participation and IRP loans are sort of more attractive. IRP in particular, the legislature just increased the allocation from that from 5 to 10 million in the last, not this.
2 years ago.
But the 2019 session. I guess my fear is once you go in and start advising on changes in the interest rates, that'll put us in the middle of a dogfight between the economic development agencies, the budget office, the legislature, and who gets what money is made out of it. So we sort of stay out of, so far, and the board can direct me otherwise, but my advice has been stay out of the fray on that. If there's a eagerness to adjust it, we just show the numbers and because any of these, if it's a draw in the general fund, we'll get blamed for it. If we sort of ramp up the economic development side, we get in trouble on the other hand. So hasn't really been worth it to jump into the fray. We just advise, and if you want to go this way, particularly in some of the home lending programs, the rates on that side have been costly to the general fund. So we just, okay, you can do this legislature. It's a policy decision. Go ahead and do it. The impacts of it do hit our performance numbers. So trust fund performance will go down if they do those sorts of things, which is where John and I in accounting get concerned that we'll have an artificially low rate set by policy that will reflect on the board's performance. And I frankly don't want that to happen because then they start yelling at us.
Gotcha.
You know, and this program, I like this program because it provides equity capital to small businesses that need the help to meet the down payment requirements that a bank may impose. So if the yield that we were charging, the rate that we were charging the economic development organizations was greater, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to pass on that increase to the business that they're trying to help. So I think, you know, if you look at the USDA side match, their interest rate's currently at 1%. So the economic development organization gets pretty cheap money and they're able to deploy that to the businesses in the community, you know, increase the rate that they charge to the borrower, the business, so that they can, you know, earn a little money on it. And it's just a very beneficial program to businesses in Montana that need that equity capital to start their business.
Maybe one other thing I'll add. We've got a great relationship with the Montana banks. And we don't want to put ourselves in the space of competing with them for businesses. Which is why participation is so good, because then it's a mix of their capital at risk and our capital at risk. And particularly for banks that may not have the assets to lend, we're able to step in and assist that private bank. But we don't want to be in a place of competing with Montana banks for business. We want to be assisting them in order to get the businesses going, but also support that private capital movement.
Any other questions on IRP loans?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
I don't have a question, Doug, as much as a comment that back in my USDA days, going around the state with the RD state director, who had been the head of a local development agency in Montana, it was one of the cornerstone programs that he always talked about, because while it's not a federal program, it works extremely well in conjunction with the other USDA rural development programs, including the guaranteed loan program. So it was, like I say, something that he pitched along with the federal programs every place in the state.
Yeah, and I'd echo that too. The economic development organizations really do function very well within communities, and banks do really like to work with them. They provide gap financing to get those banks in the right equity position. Sometimes they serve as just a transition to a bankable type business, but they can get a lot of businesses off the ground that just a normal traditional bank might have a challenge with. So it's a really good program to have in all our communities.
Okay. So if there's no other questions, I'll go on to page 9, which is the Veterans Home Loan Program. We have up to $50 million in the trust available for this program. The Montana Board of Housing administers the program, and they charge a servicing fee of 50 basis points. The loans are guaranteed by VA or FHA. They're available to qualified veterans residing in Montana. The veteran must contribute a minimum of $2,500. The lenders and the Board of Housing accept automated underwriting, which you have to get an approved eligible only. It's a 30-year term priced at 1% less than market rates, which is currently 1.41%. There's 272 loans in that portfolio, and it has a balance of $47.5 million as of April 30th. And the yield is currently 1.75%. You have any questions on that program?
Doug, how many of these are in default now? Any of them?
There's about 7 loans that are past due. We've had one true default foreclosure, and we did not lose any money on that loan. But there's roughly 7 loans that are past due at this time.
And this is one of the programs I mentioned where by statute, we're told to earn less than what we otherwise could in the market. So it's an implied subsidy from the Coal Trust to these beneficiaries, but it still hits our performance.
So moving on to page 10, the Montana Multifamily Coal Trust Home Program. There's 15 million of the trust available for this program. The Montana Board of Housing administers this program, and their servicing fee is 25 basis points. The program provides loans for the development and preservation of homes and apartments to assist low-income applicants. There are 30-year terms, and they're priced at 5 basis points less than the interest rate charged for loans funded by the Housing Montana Fund. There's currently 4 loans that total 5.2 million, and the yield is 2.65%. The remaining roughly 10 million is reserved. So they're just waiting for those projects to be completed, and then they'll be funded. So that program, essentially all the funds are committed at this time.
Does the requirement that the homes be for low income folks, does that expire at the end of the 30-year term?
I'm not sure, Mark.
So the way the interest rate works at Board of Housing is depending on your percentage of low to moderate, and depending on the income of the tenants,
Right.
your interest rate scales up. So it's meant for low income, but that low income is anything below the median wage for the state.
Right.
And then it scales up to that, and your interest rate adjusts upward as you approach higher income thresholds.
And generally, they pay off and go to market rate
Right.
Yep.
after 15 years.
After 15.
Okay.
That's so they don't have to have low income.
Right.
Yep.
Because the rates they charge
Yeah.
is set.
So
Okay.
it works for 15 years.
Then you're out on the street.
Well, and that's, I mean, that's what's going on right now with
Oh.
a facility in Missoula. They had a 15-year requirement. 15 years are up and they're for sale at market rate.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to page 11, which is the Montana Facility Finance Authority. They have up to 15 million of the trust available. Individual loans cannot exceed 1.5 million. MFFA administers the program. The program provides loans for capital projects to enhance Montana healthcare and community capabilities. Terms are 5 to 20 years, priced at the monthly average of the Federal Home Loan Bank. Advance rate plus 55 basis points. And the floors that we have put on the program, and we being the board, the rates cannot be lower than 2.25 for a 5-year and 3.25 for a 20-year term. And we've got 11 loans totaling 9.6 million as of the end of March, and the yield in that portfolio is 2.34%.
Doug, do you want to touch quickly on the difference between this 15 million and the master loan program that we talked about earlier?
Right.
Thank
You know, this program, the money is coming from the trust, and it's a direct loan that MFFA makes to the hospitals. The master loan programs, I view the board's position on that is we're a guarantor. It's like a contingent liability for us. And it's a backstop in the event the hospital cannot make the payments on the loan or on their payments. We step in to make those payments. So that's how I view the difference in these programs.
Mr. Chairman, clarification on that. So we're not putting any money into the master loan programs. We're just guaranteeing the loans.
Right.
Right.
Much like we do with intercap.
Okay. So this is just 15 million of the cold trust for this program.
Right. And this,
Does that make sense?
is this totally reserved, Doug?
Now,
Okay, because we had, remember at the beginning.
well, they've got 9.6 million out and 15 million available. They do have some reservations sitting out there. But it's not completely used up yet.
This was the one that we met about last year at the beginning of COVID. there was some nervousness about hospitals and whether or not we need to provide some liquidity through this program prior to understanding all the rules around PPP. The hospitals went the PPP route as opposed to this route. So
There was other funding available for hospitals too.
Mhm.
You know, a tremendous amount of COVID cases that would otherwise be something else. And then, so on a guarantee program, then the board has said we only want to limit our guarantee to 120 million.
Okay, Doug?
Okay. So going on to page 12 is the overview of the science and technology portfolio. Board of Investments became successor in interest in 1999 to this portfolio. There's currently 3 loans that you can see there, totaling $8,138,298, and our yield is 2.79%. Those we're just collecting payments on.
Doug, what is the loan to the youth system for?
You know, I'm not sure what the purpose was on that, Bruce.
it was from the 89 legislature, and it was for research funding at the 3 flagship universities, MSU, U of M, and Montana Tech.
So is it still going on?
They're paying it down, but there's nothing really there.
Yeah,
For instance, the F&A from the research money that they're getting elsewhere, they're using for debt service on this. The U of M is no longer part of this. When they paid off all their debt with this in the surprise move last January. So they're out. So it's just the 2 flagship campuses left, MSU and Montana Tech. And no one called me out on calling Tech a flagship campus.
Yeah, that was
At least.
said it to myself.
Designation. It's new.
It's the flag, you know, there's the flag, and then, you know, the U of M's in trouble because they paid their debts. You know, that.
But you know, you only hire interns from MSU.
MSU.
Look
you
how
know.
well
Not
it worked
from
out.
Tech. How come?
Are they in debt?
There are battles worth having with the CIO, and that ain't one of them.
All right, let's move on.
okay.
Fine.
We're behind.
Moving on. All right, moving on to page 13. The residential program, which is funded through the pension funds. It's for Montana residential mortgages only. The mortgages are serviced by the lender and the Board of Housing. That portfolio peaked in 2002 and it had $324 million in it. But the program scaled down due to the low mortgage interest rates. So currently we have 70 loans in the portfolio. It's a balance of about 2.45 million and the yield is 6.25%. So unless interest rates go up, you know, for residential loans, this program will remain inactive.
I'm gonna say it out loud. Why wouldn't those people refinance?
Yeah. You know, that's a good question, Maggie. They're probably, one of the reasons is their balances are low, they're seasoned loans. And if you look at the cost for them to refinance, they think it's not worth it to pay those costs to get a lower interest rate.
Good answer.
But some could save some money for sure. So the next page 14 is just the residential mortgage interest rates. The main thing there is, you know, our actuarial return we want is between 7.5 to 7.625, and current mortgage rates are well below that. So I won't go into a lot of detail in that program or rates.
That would dictate the use of these funds, is that correct, John? I mean, if you were getting a competitive rate on mortgages, you'd be putting more money in this program.
Well, we don't really control who's gonna get the
Rates
loan
go
or not.
up, they'll pull from it.
Okay.
Okay, Doug.
Okay, so then the next slide on page 15 just gives you a view of the programs by size. You can see that the participation program is the largest. followed by the Veterans Home Loan Program, infrastructure, and so on. The comparison on the next slide is on 16 on the left column, or the copper looking color. That's this year. So you can see the participation program is up about $10 million from the 2 years. Infrastructure's down. IRP is up a little bit. Veterans Home Loan Program is up significantly. Of course, the multifamily home program, it wasn't around 2 years ago, so that's why that's increased. But you can see MFA's borrowing. And then the MSTA is down because we've been just getting principal payments on those loans. Any questions on the differences?
Nope.
Okay, so moving on to the last page. In summary, the in-state loan programs were created by the legislature, and we currently have 6 active programs. The size of the program portfolio is determined by the economy and the lender liquidity and willingness to use the programs. The portfolio consists of high quality credits. The overall yield in the portfolio is 2.41%. Residential loan program is currently dormant and will stay that way until rates increase. The VA mortgage loan program will have limited use since it's near its maximum allocation. And then what I want to continue to do is outreach with the lenders and government agencies and the economic development organizations on the programs. So with that, be happy to answer any more questions that you guys may have.
Okay. Any other questions for Doug? Thank you, Doug. If
Thank
not,
you.
Louise, we'll go to tab 4. And Louise, you're there?
I'm here. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nice job, Doug. Well done. So this is under tab 4 for the bond program, and you'll see there's 3 different items here that we usually do for our quarterly reports: our activity summary, the staff approved loans report, and also something a little bit new and in a different time of year would be the overview and the program highlights. This is a very brief overview and not the longer one that was presented as a board orientation presentation. That was a 15 slide PowerPoint that was offered at that time during our annual remarketing in February of 2021. And I'm happy to forward that. Welcome any of the listeners to contact me for a copy of that. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer for a little finer detail on the program. But this one really is the program overview, just a brief one. Program highlights, I like to say what's in the headlights for the program. So the overview is that the board administered several bond programs through the Montana Economic Development Bond and the Municipal Finance Consolidation Act, created as part of the Build Montana program in 1984. So InterCAP came around in 1987, and this is the board's most active program under the bond program, the Enterprise Fund. This one is for local government entities. It's for universities and certain eligible state agencies. How do we fund it? We fund this by issuing tax-exempt bonds, and this is done just as an as-needed basis. So what we do is we look at 5-year averages of fundings and repayments, and to see what is the demand out there when we issue these bonds, and what it does, it creates a pool of funds that we can use to lend out those funds. So just as an example, we have 6 bonds that are in that pool. They were issued in 2003, 4, 7, 10, 13, and 17. So it really just kind of depends on the demand. Once again, we really don't see a need for a new issuance until Series 2003 matures in 2025. So that's just a little bit ways out. We also when we have that cash available to loan. So the true source of that is really to get those funds out in a loan out there to our borrowers. So as those funds are sitting there, it's cash available to loan. Those funds are restricted as to what we can reinvest those in. And so right now with the market the way it is, those funds are a little harder to get up to the yield that we can get is of course the bond rate yield. If we get anything over that, we have to rebate it back to the federal government is how those work. So moving on a little bit further down into the memo there, on the average, there's over the past 5 fiscal years, we've funded over 30 million, committed over 30 million. Our annual report for fiscal year 20, we estimated about 25 million. And so funded and committed. So just to tie the things together that we're looking at here, looking at the activity summary, you can see how far along we are within this third quarter of commitments and funding. So fundings, we have 15 million and commitments about 16 million. But recently, the fundings at this point, and they're usually pretty busy this time of year, just right before fiscal year end, you're looking at, we have scheduled almost 5.7 million. So that pops that up to about 20 million. And then in the commitments, we've staff approved, have done about 4 million coming up here in this next quarter. And also, of course, the loan committee approved about 5.8 million for the fire district and fire service area recently. So that pops that one up to about 26. So we're kind of right on schedule with that. Let's see. So how do we, when we're looking at the table in the memo here, that really shows it's not the full history of the program. It's just when it really started taking off in 95. So you can see the difference between the borrower loans outstanding, the intercap bonds outstanding, and then the loan interest rates at the time. So in the beginning, the extremely high loan interest environment in the 80s for the banking industry, it really spurred on the creation of intercap. And so it really gave the eligible borrowers the ability to for low cost financing option for the eligible borrowers at that time. So I mean, just thinking about it, when you look at the rating history for the board for the intercap program, that rate history shows in 1989 that the highest rate was 7.95%. Looking at that in comparison to this market today, that sounds really high. But at the time, from what I understand, because in 89 I was in high school, but from what I understand, the equipment loans and vehicle loans were in the high teens, and the homes were in the low teens. So it really shows the difference and the need for the intercap program to have a place for eligible governments to go. So when we're looking at these bonds, the bonds are backed by the board in 2 different ways. Now this is the same kind of a scenario, very, very close to the Montana Facility Finance Authority, the credit enhancement that was being discussed earlier. Kind of the same scenario, except for with the board, those bonds are issued as long-term bonds, but they are put bonds, or they're able to tender those within a year, the investors. And so what the board does is actually obligate. So if someone tenders those bonds and another investor doesn't come along and pick those up that year, then it is the board's obligation to purchase those bonds and keep trying to sell those in the meantime. They're also obligated, the board is also obligated to guarantee the payment to the bondholder. So the interest payment on there. I'm happy to say this has never happened since the inception of the program. The funds that are designated as the repayment source would be PermCoal STIP, Trust Fund Investment Pool, and then the Treasure State Endowment Program, which is newly minted as the Montana Coal Endowment Program by Senate Bill 258. So those are specific bonds or specific funds that are designated as that repayment source, but it's not necessarily limited to that. And so looking at how the program works, going to the second page of this program, there are various forms of debt obligations that make up the loan assets. So you're looking at general promise to pay notes, you have GO bonds, full faith and credit, rural and special improvement district bonds, which have a special assessment pledge, revenue bonds, interim financing, bond anticipation notes. It was mentioned earlier about the USDA rural development. A lot of times Intercap is used for the interim financing in preparation for those. So the USDA long-term actually comes in and takes out those bonds. So when we're looking through the loan review process, it's rather involved. We do an in-depth financial credit analysis, and that also includes statutory authority verification. An attorney's opinion is also required with several representations, and first position liens are placed on the vehicles and equipment. So let's see, program outreach. We do a lot of that during our COVID time period. Of course, all that shut down, but it came back on beginning in May, cautiously in Zoom conferencing form. But then now that things are opening up, I was actually able to go to a conference, have a presentation in Great Falls at the Montana Rural Water, the WASAC, that's the Water Wastewater Action Coordination Team. Also slated for the Montana Association of School Business officials and the Montana Fire Trustees Association. And I believe the road supervisors want me to speak at their conference this year as well. So of course with Executive Directors Villa's permission, I'll see if I can be able to get to go do those. So here's a fun little fact here. In 2022, Intercap will have been in service for 35 years. Thus, it is time for us to take in a few areas wherein lies the opportunity for a fresh new perspective. So what's in the headlights? We're looking at a few things. Executive Director Villa briefly touched on in loan committee, one of those being just the funding source of the loans, with possibly consolidating all 6 of those bonds and looking at the indenture a little more closely. How we reinvest the cash process and costs, the credit enhancement fee, prepayment, short-term borrowing, loan application form, submission and review process, vehicle equipment security liens, and quite possibly a new concept to the program, rotating loans under one commitment to accommodate vehicle equipment replacement plans, common to standard government operations. So kind of reminds me of a little advice I got from a preschooler of, if you want a kitten, ask for a pony. It's the best way to do it. You just go for the gold, right? So that's what we're looking on. Really depends on finding the findings of the work that's outlined above. If there's going to be a future request to the board of an action to implement a change, but there's no action at this time. And I appreciate everyone's ears for this hopefully brief overview, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, questions for Louise? You answered them all, Louise.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thank
Joe.
The pony kitten was.
The pony kitten.
Oh, I thought that was just a fact.
All right, tab 5.
Thanks, Louise.
New commitments. Ethan and Thomas. Who's up?
Ethan's up first.
I'll dive in here, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everyone. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Outstanding. Okay. So first up on the docket is Bell Core Fund 1. As a reminder to everyone, Bell Partners is a current high conviction multifamily real estate operator in our portfolio. We previously committed to their value add funds 6 and 7. Over the course of the last 15 months or so, I engaged Bell in discussions around creating a much longer duration, cash flow oriented strategy, which resulted in Bell Core Fund 1. So of note here, it's a much longer term, by say 4 years with a couple of extra 2-year extensions. So, arguably a 14-year hold. But Bell will execute a strategy whereby they'll go out and acquire very stabilized multifamily assets in growth markets. The markets are listed here in the board brief you have in front of you. It's their 14 core markets they've focused on the last number of years. Very attractive terms, attractive GP commitment, low management fee, European style waterfall, just a different strategy with a very high conviction, vertically integrated multifamily operator. We made an $80 million commitment in cap to this fund, and we also made a $50 million commitment to this fund in the trust fund. Those are the highlights. I'll keep it brief. Certainly happy to answer any questions.
So, Ethan, Carl, the target size is the target size that they want investors to invest, correct?
Yeah, so the target size is yes, how much, if I heard you correctly, that's how much they target to raise. They're targeting 200, they can't raise more than 300.
Yeah, so I'm confused by the target size. It says
So-
target investment size 80 million to 120 million.
Oh, I apologize. I'm misunderstanding your question. So the target size 80 to 120 million refers to the size of an underlying investment that they will make in the fund, and that's on a gross basis. That includes both debt in the form of a mortgage and equity that they would use from the fund that they raised. Does that make sense?
So that's the target size of their investment.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I got it. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Yes, we do.
So we committed 130 million to this Belcor One Fund?
That's correct.
And we have other commitments. What's the total commitment to Bell?
We committed $30 million to their value add fund 7 and I believe it was $20 million to their fund 6 and $30 million to their value add fund 7 and $130 million to this core fund.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
So members of the board, if I can throw something in here real quick, pursuant to Ethan's presentation tomorrow, when we do the deep dive on real estate and real assets, I have the summary documents that the cabinet committee would get before we actually approved these types of investments. We didn't include them in the packet because there's quite a bit of stuff here, but just in case people are curious, thought we would have that available if anybody wants to take a look. I've got it, and obviously Ethan will have a deep dive tomorrow on that entire process. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
Do you do it yourself, John or Ethan? Do you guys have any comments, I guess, surrounding just cap rates in the multifamily market right now, just relative to historic levels? Sure, Ethan, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Happy to field that one. So pre-pandemic, cap rates were moving down. So they were compressing, which similar to bond rates represents an inverse correlation to value. So as cap rates go down, values go up. For those who didn't know that, throughout the pandemic, multifamily was one of the more and most resilient of the property types. There certainly have been some valuation adjustments, but generally speaking, and depending on the asset, the market, et cetera, multifamily is back above pre-pandemic pricing. So cap rates continue to compress to keep it short.
but it still overall represents a good investment opportunity based on your guys' analysis.
Yeah, I certainly believe so. You know, in an environment where, frankly, at least during my career, yields across asset classes have just continued to compress. You know, I'm spending personally more time thinking about current cash flow distribution to us, particularly as we need to meet the needs of the fund and pay benefits. And multifamily is certainly one of the most stable, predictable, higher cash flowing, higher net operating income margin of the property types. And that is precisely where I'm spending more of my time these days, is thinking about acquiring investments on behalf of the pension fund that have a higher cash flow profile that is more predictable, more stable, and not so dependent upon capital appreciation and capital markets activity per se, and is more, you know, hey, we've got current income here that we're going to distribute to our investors, so we can, you know, help them pay their cash needs to pay benefits. And so multifamily, certainly, as was again witnessed during the depths of the pandemic, but even before that in the GFC, et cetera, is one of the most resilient property types from a valuation perspective. It's one of the most resilient property types from a maintenance and sustainability of cash flow perspective. You know, rents reset anywhere from monthly to every 6 months to every 12 months. So there's a built-in sort of inflation hedge there. And so, yeah, sorry to be a little long-winded, but absolutely, I think multifamily is very much still an attractive property type. And just to set expectations, if I haven't in the past, I'm continuing to look to grow our exposure in that regard, in multifamily specifically.
So I think just to add to that, I agree with everything Ethan said, and it's all relative at the end of the day, right? So I mean, core fixed income, obviously a struggle to find yield there. This is an area where we can get something that's fairly stable. And I think the inflation protection that Ethan touched upon has become, we'll talk about it, you know, a little bit more tomorrow, but you know, that's probably one of the biggest debates in the market right now is where's inflation going? Is it going up? Is it going down? You know, not sure we know, but certainly this is an asset class in an area that offers some protection in that regard. Should inflation take off in ways that we haven't seen, frankly, since the 1970s, probably, as Louise touched on.
Thanks. That's
Anything else on Belcourt? If not, Ethan, Copenhagen?
Sure. Thanks, Carl. So the next investment we'll discuss here is in Copenhagen Infrastructure 4. As I had previously discussed with the board, our real assets portfolio is pretty heavily allocated to onshore oil and gas. We have a sizable timberland exposure, and I've actively been trying to diversify away our exposure to those particular segments of the portfolio over the last handful of years. And similar to real estate, thinking about long-term, predictable, contracted, cash flow oriented strategies. And this is what I think we precisely achieved by making this investment, 75 million euro commitment to Copenhagen Infrastructure 4. Copenhagen, which is sponsored by Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, based out of Copenhagen, Denmark. This is a group, the four founders spun out of a company called Ørsted, which is a company over in Copenhagen that for many years focused on offshore, onshore wind turbine energy, renewable energy project development, and slowly decided and progressed into various other technologies of renewable energy. Ultimately, these four, spun out, created their own private equity firm, and have subsequently built up a firm, a team of 150 plus employees scattered around the globe, focused on developing renewable energy projects all over the world, embracing a multitude of different technologies, whether it's onshore or offshore wind, solar, biomass to energy, et cetera. They are truly what we refer to industry vernacular jargon as greenfield focus, which means sort of ground up development from actual site sort of selection, a rolling field out in the middle of rural America or rural Denmark, where they think, wind speeds are high and consistent, and they'll go buy the site, seek entitlements to get approvals to erect whatever they, think is right for that particular piece of property, be it, solar array, wind farm, et cetera. This is Fund 4, gigantic GP commitment here. They committed $261 million of their own capital to this fund. It's diversified across renewable technologies. It's diversified across the globe. The standout here, which you have no doubt noticed, is it's a 20-year fund. It is a 20-year fund with 5 one-year extensions, and that, to me, anyway, makes a whole lot of sense. These are very long-lived assets. They enter into purchase power agreements that can be anywhere from 15 to 35 years. They're contracted cash flows with inflation adjusted, 2 to 3% kickers or adjustments every year to those annual cash flows. And in a paradigm or a framework where we exist in perpetuity, if we can participate in the creation of these assets and get in at a low valuation before we take on all the development and financing risk and contracting risk, and then put all that in place and mitigate the risk through structuring these contracts, working with global suppliers of wind turbines or solar panels, et cetera, and then putting these purchase of power agreements in place with credit tenants, the likes of Amazon or other government credit tenants, and then hold on to those cash flow streams that are going to give us 6, 7, 8, 9%, sometimes even more, and even on a levered basis, incrementally higher than that. When we're trying to hit a long-term actuarial rate of return of 7.5%, these long duration assets make a whole lot of sense to me. And so, I've been looking at the infrastructure space for a long time, and there are these core infrastructure funds that will go out and buy these operating assets where all the development and construction risk and, financing risk and the risk of putting a tenant in place has already been taken. And as a result of that, those yields have compressed dramatically, and you can invest into these sort of core open-ended operating infrastructure assets and collect 2, 3, maybe 4% annually. And, on a relative basis, if you look at treasuries, that's arguably attractive, but that is not accretive to our actuarial rate of return. And that to me, and plus there's just a crush of capital in the space. There's tons of money chasing these deals. And so Copenhagen Infrastructure 4 represented a very, very differentiated opportunity to me. And I believe it was Carl or maybe Jack who asked the question at the last board meeting about, isn't it risky to take on sort of the development and site selection and construction risk? And I said, yeah, it absolutely is. But it's not if you do it with a group that's been doing it their entire lives or careers. And that's what I found here in Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. And I'm very happy that the cabinet saw it as well as a very attractive opportunity. So we made the investment. So apologies for the long anecdote and perspective. Happy to answer any questions.
And you have one from Tara.
Ethan, tell me how the investment period works versus the fund term. So are we only committing for 3 years, the investment period, or are we committing for 20 plus years?
We're committing for 20 plus years. The investment period is the contractual term within which Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners needs to invest the entirety of the fund.
So they-
And then over the course of the next, call it 17 years, they will continue to construct, operate, et cetera, the assets that they commit capital to. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
You bet.
So they have 3 years to plan it. They're not, we're not gonna spend all, they're not gonna spend all their money in 3 years, are they?
No, they will not, absolutely not, Carl. It's a great question, a good point. They will absolutely not spend the $7 billion they ultimately ended up raising, but they will commit to these projects, and alongside that commitment will be a capital plan, a capital budget, and that budget will be spent down through time as they work through various, environmental assessments, move dirt around, start building and paying construction contractors, start buying wind turbines and paying suppliers, et cetera. If
I
that
get
makes
it.
sense.
Thank you, Ethan.
You bet.
Anything else for Ethan on Copenhagen Infrastructure 4?
Yeah, I guess this is more, maybe it's a general question. Do we have any sort of ESG, guidelines or expectations within, this overall?
We don't have any specific ESG requirements. It's something that we incorporate within our investment process with any of the different areas, but there's no requirement per se. So, and we tend to look at when we think about ESG, we look at it from a economic perspective, if you will. So it's not necessarily, we won't do this because it, has a bad economic or environmental or social thing. Is that going to be impactful to the economics at the end of the day? In other words, if there were a cleanup cost associated with something or a potential cleanup cost, are we being compensated for that risk appropriately? And so it's a broad consideration, but not, there's no requirement per se that we invest a certain amount in solar or something like that.
Well, that's good when you can actually find an investment that, looks attractive within that kind of world, and it looks attractive on its own merits, then it's, might be something easy to highlight.
Okay, anything else for Ethan for now? If not, Thomas?
Thank you, Al.
See you, Ethan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I hope you can hear me all right.
We can hear you fine.
All right, great. Always a little bit tricky with the connections. Should have figured it out by now. Continuation to Ethan's comments earlier, actually, I present to you EQT Infrastructure Fund 5. This is a second infrastructure deal, I believe, in the portfolio then. And again, continuing to Ethan's comments, really looking to diversify our real assets portfolio. So this will sit within Ethan's real asset portfolio. We did commit $50 million here. And even though this is a new investment for the board, the relationship between staff and EQT is dating back about probably 4 years by now. So we've had senior members of the team visiting Helena. We've visited them in their New York, London offices. And I believe Ethan even had a chance on his recent trip underwriting Copenhagen to stop by at their Copenhagen office. As you can see on the board brief, this is an opportunistic value add infrastructure strategy. So a little bit differentiated to what Ethan just presented. Not quite as long dating, although longer term as we usually see. However, EQT is overlaying somewhat of a private equity approach to infrastructure investing. So the strategy will invest in infrastructure sectors, telecom, fiber, logistics, all of the usual suspects globally, as well opportunistically. Historically has been about a 50-50 split between North America and developed Europe. We expect that continuation of that strategy. However, the team believes, and we believe so as well, that every business can be improved somewhere. So they're really putting that private equity buyout spin on infrastructure, where they parachute in with advisors, operating partners, and improve the projects and the businesses that they invest in. One other highlight I wanted to make here is on the fee. Management fee, we're always fee conscious. We were able to take advantage of a first close discount as well as a commitment size discount for the $50 million. And we're able to bring that management fee down to 1.45%. The original fee, I believe, was 1.6. Headquartered in Sweden, but as I mentioned, it is a global firm with over 700 employees investing across real assets, real estate, private equity, with offices in over 11 countries, excuse me. Those are all the remarks I had prepared for EQT. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I have a question.
Yes.
So Thomas is under this waterfall type where you have European and American. Is American deal by deal waterfall? Is that the definition on the back?
That's correct. Yeah, European traditionally classified as a whole fund waterfall, meaning that the whole fund has to return capital before the GP can get into the carried interest. The American portion would be on a deal by deal.
Just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Thomas, we usually see that as one or the other. Why is?
Good, yeah, good question, Carl. So first of all, maybe I'll just explain that. So it's really a percentage based on the commitment. So 90% of our commitment, i.e. $45 million, will be treated under the European or whole fund waterfall. And 10% of the commitment, or $5 million, will be treated under this American waterfall. It's a little bit of a bonus to the GP, if you will, so that they have the opportunity to get into carried interest a little bit sooner, considering that this is a 12-year fund with, you know, a couple of extensions. So we're expecting this to run anywhere from 12 to 15 years. And it just becomes harder to wait essentially for the management team to get into the carried interest. So that's why they implemented this strategy. We're comfortable with the way it's structured. It's not, I mean, 100% European would be more LP friendly, but we're still comfortable with the structure.
Is it, have I missed it before, where it's been split like this, or is this something new for us, relatively new for us?
We've seen it in the industry. This would be, as far as I'm aware, the first and only investment where we've seen that split waterfall, but it's not uncommon.
Thank you, Thomas. Anything else from anybody on this one, on EQT? If not, Thomas, I think we can go to Capital Spring.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll move right on. Capital Spring Investment Partners Fund 6. So this is a re-up opportunity for the board. We committed $40 million a few years ago in Fund 5. Now we have the opportunity to re-up. We committed $50 million to this current fund, Fund 6. Capital Spring, really a niche sector specialist, direct lender in the restaurant food industry. And I'll make a couple of comments there. So looking to build a defensively oriented portfolio of senior secured first lien, primarily first lien loans in this industry, in this one sector, restaurant or food related businesses. You might think, oh, wait a second, this is quite interesting. You know, 2020 pandemic, restaurants were largely shut down throughout the entire country. Rest assured, we did our homework there. We were in touch with the management team probably on a monthly basis. I believe Michael's on the phone too. You can chime in to make sure that the strategy is doing exactly what they set out to do. And the team successfully was able to prove that, yes, we can manage through cycles. We can manage through even pandemics where restaurants countrywide are shut down for weeks or months on end. This is not investing or loaning, making loans to, you know, your one location, Steve's Cafe and Helena. These are franchises with, 50, couple hundred locations countrywide, some of them in Canada, some of them in Mexico. So even though some may shut down for a couple weeks, it is very unlikely that the entire country at the same time does. However, that's exactly what we just witnessed earlier last year. Capital Spring was able to manage through that as they always bring up the fact, well, people will need to eat no matter what, how bad the situation is, you're going to have to get some food. Where you're going to get that might change, but ultimately people will need to eat. So essentially the entire portfolio, all the franchises, the restaurants were able to pivot within several weeks to take out, drive-through delivery, whatever have you, so that they could stay open and generate revenue throughout this pandemic. The prior fund came out with a 10% net return last year. We believe that is very successful. The team has proven that they can do it, even in an unprecedented pandemic, and we have full confidence that they can do it go forward. So we made a commitment here again, $50 million to this next fund. Happy to answer any other questions there.
This is Jack. I have one. In the different sectors, I consider restaurants one of the highest risk sectors of all. So not that they could manage through the pandemic, but why pick restaurant sector versus another sector to do this type of investment?
So the Capital Spring team has been doing this for, 15 years, specialized in the sector, have multiple people on the team that actually have managed restaurants and built restaurants in their past. They found this niche almost, I don't know how you want to call it, but it's a sector where access to capital is difficult. So your standard bank, your Wells Fargo, is hesitant to loan to, a Denny's franchisee, simply because they're, just as you pointed out, there are certain risks involved, and Wells Fargo certainly does not want to take a key if some loan goes bad, and they don't want to take a Denny's restaurant downtown Helena. They don't know what to do with it. So in turn, this particular team here for Capital Spring has been working out in exactly that sector as a niche capital provider and has built a name and a reputation here. And we believe strongly that they can manage those risks since they are specializing in this particular sector.
Does that answer your question?
Let's just say, as I was a banker, I'd be a little more concerned.
Do you have any, so did you say that the return on the prior fund that you've invested in was 10% in 2020?
Yeah. The strategy overall has been averaging about 10% net of all fees. And that's exactly what we have achieved in the prior fund 5 that we are invested in as of year end 2020. And we are certainly, that's also the target range that we're looking at for this investment, to be in that high single, low double-digit return spectrum net of fees.
Do you feel like that return was inflated at all based on the government stimulus provided, throughout the PPP lending, et cetera?
It was oh, sorry, go ahead.
Performance that was masked by kind of that government intervention?
No, not in this case. There was very limited exposure to any PPE in the portfolio itself. I believe there was maybe a handful of locations that really had access and needed access to some of the PPE money, but all of that was sorted out within a few months. And then the restaurant locations went back on their own operations wise and did not really need any further government assistance throughout the year. So I don't believe there was any inflation on the price, on the returns.
So the majority of their portfolio is typically fast food or fast casual. So a lot of them actually saw an uptick.
That's helpful
what they
to
were
understand that.
getting. So a lot of them did better than you would have expected, and even the fast casual, which you would have thought might have taken a bigger hit, they were able to transition very quickly to takeout type stuff, and so they had very limited hits within the portfolio and very limited need for PPP loans and things like that.
Yeah. Do they make any considerations on geography or within investments in more densely populated metropolitan areas that have kind of tighter lockdowns?
Yeah, so currently really the only 2 or 3 locations that are still not back to 100% capacity are in Northern California, Oregon, Washington. So as to your point, exactly the higher densely populated areas where there were stricter regulations and still are stricter regulations in place. they're operating, they're just not operating at 100% capacity. But the portfolio itself is very diversified throughout the entire country. I mean, for example, there's a Hardee's here in Helena that is in there, and I believe a Denny's also. So we do have some local Montana exposure in the portfolio as well. So it's not limited to just, New York City or San Francisco, or Seattle.
Was that where we're going to dinner?
I believe Dan was sponsoring, right?
Jerry, did you have something?
Well, I was just trying to figure out, so the franchisee is paying 10% to borrow the money, essentially, because we're not getting any appreciation of the property, right? We're
Correct.
just financing, so they're paying 10%. Wow.
Okay, anything else from anybody?
It is, okay, but I go back to Jack, it is pretty high risk, especially now when you see forced, hire signs all over the place too. And restaurants are shortening their hours and all that. This is a big risk.
I would suggest, I guess, that, the 10% indicates, I don't think you're getting 10% on most of your commercial loans, and as Doug just talked about, so, we're getting paid for it. These guys are good operators that are able to, diversify that risk. It's not like you might have a restaurant or 2 or 3 or 5, I don't know, and that maybe they do default, but these guys are also, as Thomas mentioned, the management team is more than capable of taking over the keys. So if something like that happened, so they're going to own everything at the end of the day if they don't pay the loan. So
Correct.
more than capable of going in, running that restaurant, and selling it to somebody else ultimately, or what have you. So they're pretty well protected in terms of the losses that they're going to see, I think, in most instances, and obviously an attractive loan rate. I mean, it's probably quite a bit higher than 10%, Terry, by the time you figure out all the fees that management's charging and all of that. So, but to Jack's point, I mean, this sector's underbanked. It's harder to, there's a reason why they're here, right? I mean, and this is a private credit investment, there's a reason why it's not in the safest portion of the market, because that's not where the returns are, and that's not what we're looking for in this instance.
I know when we looked at our loan portfolio that we were loaning out, we would look at, how many hotel or what percent are hotels, et cetera, et cetera. I know we've got some other restaurant exposure, because I remember Michael bringing a deal that was mom and pop restaurants. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, I guess my question is, and I'm sure you guys are doing this, looking at what percentage of our total private assets are
In that
in the
space.
sector, and I would imagine it's a fairly low number, isn't it?
I don't have it off the top of my head, Terry.
Yeah.
But we can get it for you.
I just think
Yeah,
that
unless
would kind of
Thomas
help
knows.
answer my concern about, if it's 5% of our whole portfolio, I'm way less concerned than if it's 30.
So you're shaking your head, Thomas, that's not 5% of our whole portfolio? Is that what
Thomas, do you have a ballpark? Do you know?
I don't have the number on top of my head either, but happy to look into it. But to your point, Terry, I doubt it's anywhere close to 5% of the entire portfolio, which would really surprise me. So this is the only designated restaurant exposure that we have. And yes, there may be some overlap with some other strategies, but those will be 1 deal, 2 deals per fund, so not a whole strategy. We're happy to look that up, but I'll doubt it would be anywhere close to 5%.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
I see you. It's 3. We have 15-minute break scheduled, and let's take it. Tab 6. Is that right?
Yep, that is correct.
Tab 6.
I'm bringing some backup, so.
Well, and we brought in the heavy hitters.
Right.
Don't mention heavy to John.
They chose this.
Yeah, right.
They chose the spots furthest away from you.
Huh?
Funny.
Okay. My notes don't say who's in charge.
Well,
So,
we don't know ourselves half the time.
okay.
But I'm gonna let John take the first item under tab 6, which should be the proposed change to the STIP investment policy.
Okay, and this is the new.
This is
tab,
the new one, yes.
The new tab 6,
Yes.
folks. This is the new tab 6.
Go ahead, Carl. Just kidding.
What color is that, Carl?
Tab was that?
The illusion of power.
Huh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
See what I have to put up with?
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Under tab 6,
The
we
new tab 6.
are asking for one change to the short-term investment pool investment policy. We would like to change the the maximum weighted average maturity to 120 days from 60 days. The reason we're asking for this is to give us some flexibility. As interest rates continue to decline, we would like to make sure we do not go negative in the short-term investment pool. To be clear, it will add a level of risk should interest rates go back up quickly and by a large amount. We could end up with securities that are below their cost in the short-term investment pool. We believe we have plenty of liquidity to handle any problems around that. And we would be ecstatic if that were to actually happen in the short-term investment pool. So any,
So it went right back down before you could get back in.
yes,
Right.
then we would be sad.
Yes, you would.
Any questions? Happy to answer any questions.
You guys get any feedback? Sorry, did I jump in?
No.
Did you guys get any feedback from the participants within STIP as to their desire for more interest rate risk on their investments?
Only the feedback we get is wholly how much cash are we going to get? And so as to whether or not they suggest an actual risk tolerance, no, we don't get that feedback, but clearly we understand the risk tolerance of $1 for $1. In other words, we understand the participants are not willing to have us break the buck in STIP.
So with our reserve, does this increase any chance we may use the reserve?
So directionally, yes, but I think the magnitude of that is slim.
So the investments, the weighted average maturity, 120 days, but your investment, a single investment could go out to 3 years, 2 years.
So that doesn't change in our risk budget. Doesn't change.
So maybe just as a reminder too, one of the reasons that we're comfortable with this is, although STIP is, call it a money market fund, the money that's in STIP, a large portion of it, primarily the state agencies, is fairly static. So there's always a large balance there, and we kind of expect that there always would be. So really, when we're concerned about liquidity in terms of people exiting STIP and us having to have that liquidity, it's generally the local governments. Now, there's certainly flows within state government, and we talked a little bit about ARP and the CARES Act and some of that money, flowing in and out, of course. But I think, we're not changing any of the underlying liquidity requirements of 10% for a day, 15% for a week. And I think, we continue to believe that that's more than adequate to handle the flows that we would expect.
Is this related to the influx of the federal money?
It is, because as that money has come in, it's come in at an unfortunate time of very low interest rates, and we expect more money to come in that we'll have to invest at low rates.
So the dynamic in the market right now is everybody's getting this, right? All the states are getting it. So it's pushing down rates on the front end for everybody. So I think as we mentioned in the memo, rates are negative out to almost 2 months. And primarily what we're talking about here. So again, we didn't change any of our other requirements. Asset-backed paper can only be out 90 days. So really, I'd say the majority, correct me if I'm wrong, Kirsten, is, we're probably talking about investing like treasuries and agencies out longer. And that's what's negative on the very front end. So this kind of, yes, we're pushing out in some duration, but we're also doing it generally in the safer parts of the market, I guess. Is that fair?
Would you anticipate a time when we'd go back to 60?
I guess it's possible.
I mean, it's
Probably-
60, are we doing this now? In other words, are we doing this now to deal with a temporary problem?
I would say it generally hasn't been a binding constraint in the past. Probably debated a little bit whether we should just ask for 90 rather than 120, but didn't want to come back again in a month or something because we're a little unsure of, some of those flows in the market. I guess it's possible we could dial this back. So, to answer your question, yes, we're reacting to something that's existing in the market now that didn't exist prior. So
also with LIBOR retiring, there's not as many floaters in the market. So that can help our WAM a lot. And right now it's not.
It would be 120 days or less anyhow, so that gives you lots of flexibility if you say, well, we don't need the 120 or 120 days.
Yeah, I get that, but 60 was set for a reason.
Well, 60 was a little bit arbitrary.
As opposed to 120 is.
So 120's twice that. So 60 days came from section 2A7 money market funds that, the code section came out in 1940 to deal with fluctuation in interest rates in money market funds so that they didn't have problems with investors. I don't think there's anything magic about it. We picked the number because that was what was in 2A7. If we dialed it back, we would probably do some calculations to come up with a reasonable number.
And the 120, the 120 wasn't as arbitrary as we joked about. There's actually a reason for that.
And that reason again being anything in front of that in treasury, anything in front of that in treasuries is yielding negative.
So have you considered extending that 2-year maximum to try to give yourself an opportunity with the slope of the curve out a little further rather than just this weighted average maturity target?
So when we set that 2-year, when we looked at historical timeframes of how much the absolute dollar change could be in times of stress. And once you get past 2 years, and given duration, it can be really significant. And so no, we didn't look at that because we felt like that could in fact add.
Kind of brings you out of the money market fund typical structure.
Yeah, and we already get a little bit of an advantage to 2A7 funds by being able to go out to 2 years. But we feel like 2 years in, we're have significantly less risk than if we said 5 years, for instance.
Any other questions? Do you want a motion? Yeah, I think
I'd be happy to do.
Okay.
The chairman would.
No, that's fine. Not, if there are no other questions, is there a motion?
Yes, I would like to make the motion to approve the change in the Stibfort investment ball.
Is there a second? Any further discussion from anyone? Comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None.
All right, turning to the second memo under tab 6, proposed changes to pension, state fund, and full severance tax trust. starting with the public retirement plans, proposing to add 2 additional restrictions to the non-core fixed income asset class. Felt that this was prudent to add to ensure our diversification within the asset class. So as we've added, as you know, emerging market debt and preferred securities, still looking at some other strategies there as well. But we would add this in. So high yield strategies will make up a minimum of 25%, a max of 75 in non-core. And no other strategy will be more than 50% of that particular asset class. So we couldn't load up on emerging market debt as an example, something like that. Just felt that that was prudent to put some parameters around that, actually more restrictive than what we currently have. Take any questions.
We're not even close on any of these.
Not even close. Nope. Well, we would be within the high yield.
27%.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're about 60%, I think. Less, probably less than a quarter right now.
Questions, comments? If not, is there a motion?
Oh, I don't know that I can do one.
Yeah, you can.
I'd make the motion to approve that change.
Second?
I'll second.
So the motion's been made and seconded to approve the change in the Montana Public Retirement Plan investment policy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, passes unanimous.
Okay, Montana State Fund, this is really probably more of a cleanup thing than anything else. Dan Zarling, our Director of Risk Management, pointed this out to us that we did not have a limit on our non-agency mortgage-backed securities, which we do within both CAP and trust fund. And so this addition to limit our ability to add non-agency mortgages would be consistent with our other policies, and felt it was prudent to add that in as well. Again, more restrictive than what we currently have. Questions on that?
I'll move it though.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second? Second? Jeff, seconded? Any moved and seconded? Any additional comments, questions? If not, all in favor of the change in the Montana State Fund investment pool policy, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passed unanimously. Coal severance tax trust fund investment policy.
And so this one, again, not a major change, but consistent with what the legislature did this last session, changing the name of a couple of the funds from Treasure State to Montana Coal. Has to make that change within the coal severance tax trust fund policy.
Questions?
Just a name change.
Is there anything else that the legislature did that this is it? On this particular?
And that's it? That's it for the whole session?
You want to explain that?
Sounded like a good idea at the time.
It has no impact to investments, so we like it.
Less intrusive things we've done.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? None? See what happens when you bring Kelsey? Everything just goes smooth as can be. All right. Core fixed income asset class review. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'd like to introduce your fixed income team, describe the asset class, and discuss our internal investment management. To my right is Kirsten Haswell, Elsie Gochi, and John Carpenter is ably running the presentation for us. If I could refer the board to slide 3 in the presentation. What is fixed income? It's a contractual obligation to pay principal and interest over time. We generally buy bonds issued by governments and corporations. Those bonds represent an obligation that has a claim senior to equity. So we get paid first in times of stress. The coupons are contractually driven and may be fixed or floating. They may float off various indices from prime to federal funds to any number of things. Maturities are generally 1 day to 30 years for what we buy. In the past several years, you've seen government entities and corporations issuing out to 100 years. In fact, you'll see quite a few of those bonds in the index.
And we limit 30?
We don't limit to 30 exactly, but generally we're not buying past 30. So,
You're not that good, huh?
well, what do I care? It's Kirsten's problem. I'd like to talk a little bit about fixed income terminology. I think to do that, maybe we'll look at a Bloomberg description screen.
Need some glasses?
I do. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I've got blurs on all the food.
Here where it's right.
All right. Looking at the fixed income screen, you can see the Coca-Cola bond here. You can see the principal amount of this bond was when issued was $2 billion.
Where's that? Oh, there we go.
The coupon is in the middle there. You can see that bond came with a coupon of 2.25%. Yeah. Beautiful. Issue price a little less than par. You can see that the maturity there is Jan 5 of 2032. So you can also see that the spread that it came at was plus 65 basis points to the reference treasury there. The sector that Coca-Cola is in, you can see at the top there is the food and beverage sector. Ratings on this was A1 by Moody's, A+, composite A+ rating. Going on to the yield and spread screen. Pulling out a couple of things. The duration. You've heard us talk more than you want to about duration. A little short of 9.5-year duration for this bond currently. Duration, again, is a measurement of risk, of interest rate risk for a bond. So if the yield of this bond were to change by 100 basis points or 1%, then the value of that bond would change by just a little bit over 9%. So if John were to change the yield there to say 3.2%, increasing the yield 100 basis points, you can see the value of the bond declined by a little north of 9%. John, could you check that spread to and change that to 59 for me, please? And so you can see that whether or not it be the spread that causes that yield change or the underlying treasury curve that causes that yield change, the change is the same. as a percentage. Yeah, so I think leave it there for terminology. Any questions about how that works? Okay, going on to slide number 7, objectives of fixed income. The primary objective is total return. The total return for a bond is its yield plus the change in market value. Over time, it's going to be yield that determines the total return. The vast majority of the total return will come from the yield of a bond. Why do we have fixed income? Well, it's not total return right now. One of the things that we get is diversification. It doesn't have the same risk return profile as equity. So we hope that in times of significant stress in the equity markets that our fixed income investments hold up. Another big reason is liquidity. Couple of areas when we see significant stress in the equity markets, we can still raise money by selling bonds, particularly treasury bonds, but sometimes even bonds with some spread to them. But the real backstop for liquidity of fixed income is that they pay coupons and they mature even in times of stress. So that provides funds for operations. Go on to slide 8. Talk a little bit about risks. The real risk-free rate of return is the compensation that you get from a treasury over and above inflation. Inflation is a risk because we buy a bond, we get pretty much set future fund flows. Inflation can eat away at the purchasing power of that, so that's a risk. Maturity risk is all else being equal, the longer the bond, the higher the risk, and the more sensitive then that bond is to rate changes. The default risk is what we classically call credit risk, and that's that we might not get full payment of our interest and principal over the term of the bond. And liquidity risk is that even though I said that bonds were very liquid, they are traded over the counter. That means there's no exchange that they're traded on. You have to reach an agreement with another party to trade a bond. And so there can be times of stress. How we see that is a significant difference between the price the seller is willing to sell and a buyer is willing to buy, or what we call the bid-ask spread. So for instance, in March of 2020, we saw some very wide spreads in high yield in the bid-ask spread. We saw 5% spreads probably in some of those. We also saw that, not to that extent, but we saw significant spreads in investment grade corporates at that time. And for the first time in my career, we actually saw some bid-ask spread in treasuries. So that was a really interesting time.
What did we learn from that?
Well, we learned that we don't know everything. So there can be, and can always be something that surprises you. Going on to slide 9, we kind of, John thankfully demonstrated the inverse relationship between price and yield. As yield goes up, price goes down, and vice versa. And again, the magnitude of that movement is what we're measuring with duration. Going on to slide 10, unless there's any questions with terminology.
No, I just think this is my favorite page. I used this in college to explain this stuff. Yeah, I just wish that it makes it so simple. You just go,
Isn't that playground equipment?
that too.
John Putnam came up with that slide several years ago, and we've seen no reason to take it out since then.
Got a copyright on that?
I stole it off the internet.
From college.
Yeah,
From
right.
college.
Yeah.
Actually, it's an elementary school showing how.
What grade does your wife teach?
On slide 10, we're trying to give you a little bit of flavor of just the assets that we manage internally. So not assets that are in trust fund that might be managed by an external manager like a high yield or a real estate managers. So these are just the ones that we make the buy sell decisions on. One thing I would note is that as a percentage, the cap core and the trust fund have come down significantly. We've reallocated to higher yield or better returning assets. STIP, however, has increased dramatically over the past year, 18 months. You can also see that to the right where we show the transactions totaling a little better than 31 billion for the last 12 months ended March 31st and a little north of 1,100 transactions. Almost 25 billion of that being STIP and 6 billion in the treasurer's fund, which rarely has transactions outside of, they got a lot of CARES Act money. Going on to slide 11, this is a listing of our separate accounts that we manage. Been several additions over the years here. We're up to somewhere around 45 separate accounts. Separate account being an account that has any investment in addition to STIP.
Do they ever go away?
Yeah, well, as I say that, I see subsequent injury is still there, but Highway 93, I was one that went away. I spent all that money. So occasionally, but slowly.
Some of the butte funds will be going away here pretty quick. This Clark Fork will be going away pretty. Yeah.
Yep.
He's telling us.
He's telling us it could go away. The upper Blackfoot response, that should pretty well be done this summer.
So how do I don't understand how the operating funds work.
So operating funds are funds that have excess cash that's generally always there. So, I mean, maybe you carry a kind of a minimum balance in your checking account that you just don't want to go below.
I try.
Right? So,
Zero.
And I don't know when I became the subject of this.
So those operating funds are ones that we feel and the client feels that they're stable enough that maybe we can invest a little further out than STIP.
Okay.
And so those.
So these are then, so are these, maybe this is a question for you, are these client-driven decisions, or is this the legislature tells these agencies how much?
No, so the Board of Investments by law has the decision. We can make the decision. We could foolishly go in and tell one of these clients we're going to invest outside of their preference and
But who told you that Montana State University has $235.1 million to invest?
So the Montana State University, we know how much money they have, obviously. we talk to them about how much money they need to hold in STIP.
Okay.
If they say less than 235 million, then we say, great, let's get you into an investment that yields more than STIP. Usually that's treasurer's or a trust fund investment pool. Sometimes it could be an individual security. And so in the instant case of Montana State University, they have that vast majority is in fact in STIP, and only a relative small amount is in the trust fund investment.
Oh, okay.
But we're in fairly constant contact, communication, in this case, usually driven by us saying, hey, you sure, you sure, you sure? And then them saying, yes.
You said, Jim,
So-
oh,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
But not all state agencies can put money into STIP, correct? Or do I have that wrong?
So local governments can put money into STIP.
Right, but state agencies, not all state agencies can put
They
money into
can.
STIP.
Right, so they have to, for a state agency to put money in STIP, they have to be allowed by law to keep their earnings,
Right, so this,
or vice
when it
versa.
says state agencies, it isn't all state agencies. It's the state agencies that the legislature says you can.
So for example, when we appropriate money to the Department of Corrections, right, we don't just hand them all the money actually sits, in the state treasury. And as we have appropriated it to DOC, for example, then the budget office would then allow them to utilize the money, but otherwise it's still in the state resources. And so, but you have like FWP on here, I mean, they have an enterprise fund, which then they need to do something with that, those funds. And that does not go into the state treasury, from my understanding, because it's an enterprise fund. So it would be held separately, and that's when they have the authority to invest it here.
And they make the call. Well, they have to put it in the STIP, don't they?
We talk with them. So if somebody has the authority to invest outside of general fund, so it's not sitting in the treasurer's fund essentially, then we're gonna talk with them. And in FWP's example, they have enough kind of cash flow generally in that fund that, I forget what the weight is, but there's a certain weight that we've agreed upon. Yeah, we could handle 30% in trust fund or whatever it is at a given point in time. So, we'll talk with them and agree that that's an appropriate balance. Our policy internally is when we have a client like that, they need to be able to tell us that, okay, this is an amount of cash that we don't believe we're going to need, or it's going to be stable for 5 years or more before we would put it into trust fund. Because we don't want to, pulling money in and out of trust fund. So, they've got enough in STIP to meet their liquidity needs on a regular basis, but there's an excess there, and they can get some more return in trust fund. We'll work with them to figure out what that balance is. We have ultimate say, so we're not going to necessarily, if somebody comes to us and says, we want to put it all in trust fund because we want more yield, but we're going to be pulling from that all the time. We're like, no, I'm not going to do that for you. So it's a conversation.
But the
One of the
operating
things-
funds include, these include investments and stuff, these numbers.
Yes.
So one of the things that we require when an agency requests authority to set up a STIP account is they point us to the statute that, or in some cases, judgment that allows them to do it. So there's something within Title 17 or something within Title 2 or something within Title 90 that says you can keep your interest earnings, that typically interest earnings by state agencies go back to the general fund. So it stays within the treasurer's fund and churns. But if there, a judgment or some other statutory carve out that says they can have their own account, then they're responsible for buys and sells themselves at the agency level. The treasurer's account is what manages the majority of the general fund. And that's where DOC would say, hey, we got payroll coming up next week. We need X million. And then the Department of Administration is supposed to be working with us on getting that money out of treasurers, or, basically turning it into liquid cash.
So
Do we,
Back to the
do,
university systems, back to them. So for this Montana Tech, I know we used to get distributions from the state on the earnings we earned. So would this be their investment now? It's similar to when I worked there.
Yes, yeah, now we,
So these are the funds they say, I want to invest these because it could be tuition, it could be general fund for them. We're going to need it later on in the year probably. And then you're just giving them their earnings. That's where we used to get the.
You get to decide at the
Couple hundred
time you
thousand.
sign up, do you want to reinvest your earnings or do you want distributions?
Right. And I think most of us took distributions.
Valuable students to educate.
I'm just curious about one other thing, and this is neither here nor there, I don't think, but when corrections needs money, they go to Department of Administration?
Well, the budget office, which has the authority to, grant them those funds, but it comes through the D of A.
So the
Okay,
appropriations-
so then what happens? Is D of A call you or does?
We get, estimates in the evening for what's going out and coming in the next day and then see it on US Bank the next morning.
Okay.
And expect them to match at least the outgoing amounts. Sometimes they come in, we got 43 extra million today, so who knows?
I've got a spot you could put it.
Okay, so then all that gets handled. So we're not, those agencies that are in the treasurer's fund, that you're essentially only dealing with D of A.
Just some one rounded sum,
What's that?
just a sum for us. That's what
Right.
we see, yeah.
So they're the conduit for you. So we have appropriations, the money goes into this pot supposedly. You invest it, people go through D of A, get their money, they ask you for a big lump. and then- Makes sense.
Sorry to belabor this, but so the Fish, Wildlife and Parks license account, that could be conceivably in either trust fund investment pool or STIP, depending on the duration of an amount of funds.
yes, I won't use the word duration because that's a funny thing with us fixed income people, but yes, with the stickiness of those funds.
All right. Local agencies, that's just STIP, correct? Or do any local agency funds get in trust fund investment pool?
Only one, as a matter of law, a local government can invest in the trust fund investment pool essentially if Dan allows it. And so
Given the one local government that's in there, you didn't have to say that.
Dan or any other executive director
Right.
allows it, and that being the reason it would be allowed is they expect to have a chunk of money for a specific purpose for a very long period of time.
Okay, so let me then go to Montana State University, Montana Tech, U of M agency funds, and University of Montana, lumping those three together. Those could conceivably be in either STIP or trust fund investment pool, depending on how long they think they're gonna have the money, how long you agree that they are gonna have the money.
And one other wrinkle of it, we could buy a single term security or a ladder of individual securities outside of the trust fund for them.
And that's the process you were describing at the beginning, where you would go to them and say, look, of the 235 million that we've been holding for you, we've held, over the last 10 years, we've held 40.
Yeah.
So why don't we put that in something longer term?
Yes.
That's conceivably then gonna be better than STIP or trust fund investment pool.
Better than STIP, not
Better than
necessarily.
STIP.
better than
STIP.
Trust fund would get you better than STIP. And
Okay.
Sometimes they
All
tell
right.
us no.
Or sometimes the individual securities within any of these might be because they know they have specific cash needs 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. So we might, we need $10 million in 5 years and we know it. We might buy that security out and it's a certainty of cash flow and they're probably also picking up yield compared to STIP.
All right, so, sorry.
And how do you monitor that? I
Well,
mean, how do you monitor what MSU may or may not need? Or you just,
There are people in their offices, because I oversaw that area at Tech, that know how much money we're gonna need when we're gonna need it. And they work with the state constantly. Marlene was moving money around all the time. Sometimes we were negative in one area, had to,
It's just a conversation.
they just
So
talk to
you-
them, communicate with them.
When you do that at Tech, we just gotta hope somebody's doing that at U of M and MSU too.
Well, they are, trust me.
You're not running state government, Bruce, don't worry.
Just out of curiosity, do they direct any of your investments or they just give you the money and then you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just out of curiosity.
Did I say that?
I'm glad to hear that.
but the answer you gave before, they may, their needs may direct you in what you buy for them.
Sure. Sure. I mean, we're gonna have that conversation. Make sure that we, what they think their need is versus what we think it is from an investment market perspective may vary, but I would say most of the time we explain that to them. We're a resource. We're just there to help them, explain to them how it works. And, generally we come to an agreement that yes, we think this is an appropriate allocation, but we're not forcing it upon them, nor are they forcing anything upon us, nor could they.
We just did that with the state employee health pool and made a recommendation. Hey, here's a place. You don't typically dip below this number. You can put this into trust fund, get a better return. So their STIP went down, trust fund went up. The pool would likely, hopefully, if those four do their job right, make more money over the longer term. So we look at that. We provide some suggestions if something pops up. We actually took a good scrub of it earlier this year and to the point, we can consult and be a resource, but if ultimately we get told, nope, we want it all in STIP, just to have the cash liquid, that's, we have not made the decision on our part to say, oh, well, never mind, you're gonna go over here anyway.
So did people used to only be able to invest in STIP, certain things? I mean, the university system, I remember I was there for 30 years and I thought when I was first there, we could only invest in STIP. Is that not true?
Probably
seems
is
that-
true. I mean, I wouldn't doubt your expertise on that. When it changed, I'm not exactly sure.
Well, in 95, when they did their big reorganization of the university systems, that's when we started talking about being able to invest.
I mean, we have invested in something outside of STIP for, non-pension type clients for probably at least 20 years. But that's not to say that
Well, that's over 20 years ago.
past it might have been different.
That's over 20 years ago, so that makes sense. It was a system policy. I just remember at a Board of Regents meeting.
They used to manage it at the commissioner's level for the campuses. And then as part of the reorg
Then we
in
broke it out, and then
94,
that's
they
when we
let
got
the 3 campuses manage it themselves.
And then I have a question on our
Yeah.
our process on the expendable funds.
Yes, sir.
Who who's the authority for the release of the expendable funds?
So the agency, we don't determine whether or not the agency can take the money and spend it. That's entirely their decision. So what we do is try to get them to give us, it is necessary that they give us an estimate of future expenditures and update that regularly. And so based on that, we determine how much we can invest in something other than STIP.
Good. But when the manager of the East Helena Compensation Fund, or the Flying J Circular Facilities Fund, says, okay, I now need $1 million to pay those bills.
They get $1 million.
They get, it's just a capital call from them?
Yep, and so the only stipulation is say that we did a bad, or the estimate of that expenditure didn't work and they have less than that in STIP. But so we have to sell in trust fund investment pool. Can only do that once a month at the end of the month. So they would have to wait that time frame.
So our piece does not involve appropriation control. Appropriation control is the responsibility of the treasurer after the budget office sets it up. So the controls for state agencies are budget office sets it up once, treasurer's office manages those appropriations and can't distribute cash from STIP to those agencies that's not authorized by law. And then local governments, they're just governed by 1510-420 on what they can or cannot spend. But we don't do appropriation control. We don't touch cash that they buy or sell within the STIP portal. We just invest the money once we have it.
And then we give it to them once they ask for it.
And when they sell, we send them the money. Yep. And
So the Belt, the Belt Water Treatment Plant, they have $26 million, and they call and they say, and they've told us they think they're gonna spend $6 million this year.
Yes, they're gonna build a sludge pump.
Okay.
I'm curious.
Right, they're gonna build a sludge pump. And they don't, and they ask for the $6 million, we send them the $6 million, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the check on whoever is supposed to check off that they actually built the pump, that's not us.
On us.
Okay.
The voters of Belt take care.
What?
The voters of Belt take care of that.
Okay, no, I just.
It's probably some lawyer, Carl. Is that what you're getting?
No.
Actually,
I'm curious as to
actually,
what
Carl,
happened.
auditors
I mean,
would get
I don't, that's, my question is John's not out there looking to see if the sludge pump's there.
I mean, he might.
What?
It's one case, but yeah.
So that these, those, in those instances, it would be up to, it would be a judgment on, it's either a judgment or something authorized by the taxpayer. So I think in the Belt Water Treatment Plant, that's actually a judgment that they have to go in under a Clean Water Act action and take care of that system. So it's an enforcement action by DEQ. DEQ would then be responsible for making sure that that is used for the purposes that it was established for. I believe the buy sells on that one is from DEQ. It's a DEQ, yeah.
It's a DEQ
So
account.
the enforcement mechanism is from them. They're the ones that do the buy sells to get the cash. So if they weren't going to use it for the pump, they would have an internal problem as to
Okay.
who was able to go in and get the money for a purpose other than what it was
That's what I always
established
thought.
for.
We get the capital call, we pay.
Yep. Yes, sir.
We get a capital call from a person authorized to
On the
make the
STIP
capital
form,
call.
they have to be on the STIP form for that account.
That agency.
Got it.
And they're authorized to go into the portal to make the buyers, or in this case, to sell shares of STIP in order to get the cash. And then that goes out for that purpose.
Right. Thank you. And it goes to them.
And it goes to them.
We're not paying their bills.
No.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
Much
assume,
larger staff.
is there a position and a name that has to be on the form, or just a position?
So, it's a person and a name. It's not a, and that's why every August we go through the updating of the STIP forms and making sure everybody's authorized and still alive and those sorts of things.
It kind of all makes sense then.
You know, it ties together.
How many years, Carl?
Oh, my gosh.
Well,
That's our job, to make sure it all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there.
it's all right. It's later in the afternoon. I think that your attention span is at least as good as the fixed income team. So going on to slide 12, please. We talked, I think, a lot about this. We talked through this a lot just now, so not going to go into it in any significant in depth, other than say we meet with the clients and figure out what their constraints are. The constraint is generally spending the money. When do they need the money? And we select an appropriate benchmark for them. What that benchmark really is we're selecting the universe of assets that we're going to invest in for them. And then we monitor their portfolio. We talk among ourselves, and we talk with the clients regularly. And so there's 45 or so accounts. We've got a primary and a second and a backup on all of the accounts, and certainly try to, when we meet with them, try to have both of those people there. And so right now it's either Kirsten or I as a primary and John and Kelsey as a backup. But you know, as we expect as things progress, that probably they will become primaries on some of these, and I will become backups. So in that regard, I want to talk a little bit about the team, the dynamic. All the team members participate in portfolio management. We have at least a weekly meeting where we go over all the portfolios. Everybody gets input. We are continually searching for efficiency and improvements. Some of the things that we've done over in recent years is go significantly towards electronic trading. We feel that gives us better economics, but it also is more efficient for the time for the team. It's just way quicker to execute electronic trades than it is to negotiate with 5 different brokers individually. We have a systematic credit research process that we'll show you a little bit of later, and we feel like that gives us the ability to rotate among companies or industries more efficiently. And we have Bloomberg data that we're all looking at daily. Talk a little bit about the types of investments and why we use them. We get that pretty good too. STIP is essentially the default investment if you don't have the ability to predict cash flows and so can't invest in anything else. Trust fund we use, it diversifies the investment, it increases the yield, and it enhances the total returns. We will buy individual security in special circumstances. That special circumstances almost always matching a liability, asset liability matching a particular known future large cash outflow.
You see those, where do you see those?
In the environmental accounts.
Anything other than that? Generally?
No, not. Well, I should say that historically we've done that for the University of Montana was used to be pretty good at giving us some very specific cash flow forecasts that we would then buy securities to match those. That's what we were doing, right? Also, some of the insurance accounts will do that.
Oh, right.
So within STIP, you're buying, in bulk to cover all the funds. Within the trust funds, are you actually executing underneath those specific balances within each account? Or do you, buy 50 million in treasuries and then spread them around?
So mostly we buy the trust fund investment pool for them, and then do what you're saying in the trust fund investment pool itself. So we don't buy a lot of individual securities. We used to do what you said, where we might say, well, let's get 10 million of an agency 3-year and split it among these 6-8 accounts. Just felt that wasn't adding as much value as just having them with an appropriate allocation to the trust fund investment pool.
So as you do your allocations then on the earnings and stuff, it's just like a weighted, is that what it is, weighted average or something?
Yep. So they have, an entity will have X number of trust fund investment pool units. Each unit will get this amount of, a Y amount of payout every month. Or each month, that changes,
But they're not all the same. The payouts, just because if, somebody comes in, this month versus the person who was in there for the last 5 years, they somehow
yeah,
vary.
so the payout is the same on a per unit basis.
Oh, because
But
it's a
what they
pool.
bought the unit for is different.
Okay.
It's because it's a pool right now. Now it makes. There you go.
Who?
She's been on the board.
And I have to say that was very close to an accounting answer, so please forgive me if that's going on, trust fund investment pool. The strategic objective of that is to provide a diversified investment vehicle for the participants and offer a return that supports their mission, i.e. gives them money to spend. Investment objectives is to provide the return and preserve the principal is what we're going for there. On slide 16, you can see the asset allocation for the trust fund investment pool. This includes externally managed. For this one, externally managed are the high yield and the real estate. You'll note that as of the 31st, we had gotten the real estate investment up to about 16% of that pool, and we expect to continue to increase that
To
mid to upper 20s. Time frame a little bit uncertain, but shooting for 2 years-ish. And you might recall when we brought that change to the investment policy statement, we said we were going to try and get there in something like 3 to 5 years. Had a little bit of a bump in March of last year when things went to heck, so that threw the timing off, but we're going to be pretty close. Hope to be pretty close. On slide 17 are just the characteristics that you see quarterly anyway, so we won't go into those too deeply. On slide 18, you can see the historic yield of the Bloomberg Barclays aggregate index, or the universe we use for most of the funds. This is the crux of the problem. You can see that that's declined significantly over time. So a couple of things about that. We talked about the inverse relationship between total return and yield. So that's been a little bit of a tailwind for us as those have gone down. We've enjoyed a little bit of an increase in value. But going forward, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think RBK has been pretty clear as well as their expectations of returns for fixed income going forward. With that, I'll turn it over to Kirsten to talk for a while.
Short time. As I say at every board meeting, STIP objective, safety first, liquidity second, income third. That's this page 19 here. Happy to talk about any of the characteristics for STIP, but really what I want to show you is the chart on page 21, the last bullet point on 20. The yield was 11 basis points of STIP when on 3/31. Now it's 10. All that ARPA money coming into the money market funds is really making it hard to invest and getting any sort of yield. So I see that continuing to decline, at least without Fed intervention, FOMC. So until they raise rates, or they can make some technical changes to help out the very short end. But they so far have yet to bring that up at any of their meetings. So I don't have very high hopes there.
Maybe in 3 years.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you see the glory days of 2018 and 2019, where SNP was almost yielding 2.5%. Yeah, now 10 basis points. But great. Any questions on SNP? That low yield?
What would happen, or what would your guys' strategy be for like actual negative rates to the point where you couldn't kind of offset them with this duration extension?
So there would be a question as to whether or not we could use the reserve to maintain at least 0 rates. We have a reserve of about $54 million. And so that's a possibility. I don't know. We have not delved into it to see if that's something that we would defer to the executive director probably on that.
There's some leverage. Crap just rolled uphill. Did you see that?
Isn't that the objective though? The reserve?
No, the reserve was originally established that if there was a loss. But the reserve was not established contemplating negative rates. So that is where the question mark comes in, and we're, doing everything we can ahead of that to try to prevent it. But hopefully as the reopening continues and, hopefully this will kind of turn the battleship, but if it doesn't, then the weighted average maturity, if it doesn't, then we're gonna have to spend some time looking at that. I don't know. I mean, it's a unique thing for, Americans, not necessarily Europeans or Japanese, to look at. I'm going to give you $1 and get 99 cents back. It's happened elsewhere. It hasn't happened here, and I think it's there's just a mental block there for everyone. We'd certainly be in contact with the banks and see, what are you all doing? Because it's, if we're negative and they're not, or they're negative and we're not, then it could create some flow pressures on us if all of a sudden, not all local governments are in STIP. If they decide, they're Wells Fargo or, them for the sake of argument, goes negative, we could see a significant inflow to STIP, which then just puts more negative pressure on the, so hopefully the 120 days can help prevent that. And hopefully the reopening is strong enough that, but there's also like, what, $1 billion, how many trillion, 1.7 trillion entering the universe from ARPA, and then whatever comes out of infrastructure and anything else. So there's a lot of money out there.
We've seen this before to some degree. I mean, this happened post 08, 07, 08, and we managed through it. There's some levers we can pull in terms of the reserve. And never say never, and they don't have total control necessarily either. But yeah, would be some serious discussions if we thought we were going to get there. I mean, you've seen it in the broader market right now. The money market funds broadly have all cut their fees in order to keep a positive yield slightly, although they're 1 to 3 bips out there. So it's nothing much, but and that's similar to what we saw, kind of GFC timeframe as well. They all kind of cut their fees for several years, really, until it finally started climbing again, and they were able to reinstitute some of that. So hopefully we'll avoid it, but yeah, much broader discussion if it actually comes to that.
Is it? I mean, it's possible, but is it? How is it that we could be negative and the banks could be positive?
That's highly unlikely. I think it'd be the opposite first, that they would be
Right.
negative and we would be positive, and you'd see local governments fleeing the banks, coming to us.
I mean, once it goes negative, it's gonna go negative for.
I think if it went negative, the Fed would do a technical adjustment for the OIER, which is the let's see, what they pay on excess reserves. And that kind of waterfalls into the money market funds. So everything, they adjust that rate and kind of everything follows along. If banks can make money from lending to or from the Fed, they're going to do that. And that'll relieve pressure in the money market funds, at least to the point that we're not negative. But they have to act quickly if that happens. But again, that's, people in the short-term markets keep waiting for the Fed to say they're going to do that now. Hasn't happened. Maybe.
Well, it's because you're getting 10.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right, why not?
You're getting 10 basis points.
Are all the ARPA funds going into STIP, or can they go to a little longer term?
No, because we don't know the cash flow out.
So we know there's a lot of that that's not gonna get spent for a while.
So
But
it
not
might-
for 5 years. The 5-year limitation is really where trust fund comes in.
I see.
So, maybe 2 biennia,
Okay.
but we won't hit that 5-year window.
Great. Going to talk a little bit about the state fund. I think you guys are all pretty well familiar, so I won't go into it. Other than state fund is an account where we do buy individual securities. We buy the bonds and the mortgages for the state fund. Also, state fund is unique in non-pension accounts because they can invest in equities and do domestic and international equities. Their portfolio is a little north of 1.5 billion. You can see the breakout on slide 23. We'll go over that more in depth tomorrow. So what are some of the advantages of internal fixed income management? Well, cost, we're cheap. We cost about 1.1 basis points, pretty cheap compared to the other possibilities of investment management for fixed income there. We have an experienced team. That being said, John joined us in July of last year and Kelsey in October. Kirsten and I have been doing this for quite some time, and of course, John Putnam, who stays involved, has been doing it for quite some time. We have, I think, sufficient portfolio analytics system with Bloomberg Support System. We use external managers as a sounding board. So that's pretty much going to be Reams that we talk to fairly regularly and just say, hey, what are you guys doing for mortgages? And they are like us saying, well, we can't buy them at positive yields hardly, so we're not buying them. So anyway, that's the sounding board we would use for external managers. We obviously rely heavily on accounting and operations. You saw the size and the magnitude of those trades that we do. We use the Bloomberg AIM system for trading. We also use Bloomberg's E-Trade system. And we're about 2 years ago, we brought on Market Access, where we sell a lot of corporate or buy corporate bonds in the open market. For research, our main credit research provider is CreditSights. They're essentially the gold standard in in the non-captive research market. We also use Give Me Credit. One of the advantages for them is they're a little more, we can get an analyst on the phone a little easier. We use Standard & Poor's Capital IQ. The newer analysts like that. One of the things they like about it is just the industry background research there. And of course, we use Bloomberg's, the gold standard tool in the industry. And we leverage our brokers, not so much on an individual security basis. You know, you call up a broker and ask them if they think Coke's a good bond, and they're going to say, yeah, if you're buying, no, if you're selling. So, but what they do is an excellent job with is, and more so since COVID hit, is have regular conference calls and Zoom calls that we can get in on, and they talk about economics and the market in general. So again,
what don't we have?
Don't we have? We do not have a very good attribution system. So that's part of a separate part, but as I understand it, a part of the custodial RFP. That maybe we're going to look at a little better attribution system.
What does that mean, an attribution?
So I can look at the Bloomberg system and say, okay, I understand where we outperformed and underperformed. But what's more difficult is to say, okay, in the last 18 months, how come? Was it because of my duration, my contribution to duration of this particular sector was over or under the index? That's not well calculated. And so there's things that would be beneficial there from an attribution standpoint. We used to have the Wilshire system, and that did an excellent job, but it took up a monumental amount of John Putnam's time at that time to just keep it updated and functioning. And that's just I would say the most obvious off the top of my head. Going on to slide 18, then just to summarize experience, we've got a well-defined process. Kelsey's going to run through that a little bit. We've got a low-cost structure. We've got control. In other words, one of the advantages to internal management is if John Putnam or came and said, well, you know, I think we ought to be underweight duration, we can make that change internally. It would be much harder to go out and tell 6 external managers that they need to be underweight. We've got a solid long-term performance across the portfolios and benchmarks, and we believe it's a core competency of the BOI.
Oh, no, fine, do it.
And with that, I will turn it over to Kirsten to talk about some of, and demonstrate some of, Kirsten and Kelsey to demonstrate some of our tools and talk about our expanded team concept.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'd like to start by agreeing with John that, you know, he is not an authoritarian leader. He doesn't tell us what to do and expect us to do it. We all get opinions and get to discuss everything from economics to credit names. And our opinions matter, which is important for, and probably why we get along so well. John Carpenter over here is my Vanna White today. Like to also say, I will also say he is trained up as a backup on STIP now, so I got to take a couple days off last week, not for fun, but he was able to manage the portfolio in my absence, and that's a great feeling. I'm sure John, and John are very happy too. So we'll start here, kind of show you things we can look at on Bloomberg. This first screen here is, John, would you change that date to 1/4/20? Yeah, instead of 21, sorry. Way back, but pre-pandemic, we're going to show you the change in the yield curve. Pre-pandemic, the yellow line, when it pulls up, will be very flat. That's what we call a flat yield curve. Front end, we were still getting some pretty good yield there, but the long end about the same as where we are now. Now you can see why it's so hard to get any yield going out. 1 year, it's pretty much at zero there. Something we look at quite a bit. You can also see the change down below. I look at this every day and compare it to, yesterday sometimes if I forgot what happened. It's helpful. Something else we look at, wondering what's the Fed doing? What's the Fed thinking? Here's their dot plot. Low rates through 2023 is what they're saying. Long term, maybe we'll get back up to 2.5% Fed funds, but for now we are low. The purple and white lines there, that means the market doesn't always listen to what the Fed says, or they don't always agree with the Fed. The next tab up here, the world interest rate probability screen, shows that 10%, there's a 10% chance that the Fed hikes in June. Pretty sure that's not going to happen, but the market says there's a chance. So, something else we like to look at. This changes daily. Always cool to see. The next tab up here, this is our economic releases. We got a couple surprises this last month. Payroll number was a huge dud for April. So that's, something we had a little conversation about as soon as it came out, trying to see what's going on. As you can see, the CPI has a green bell on it. It'll ring for John when it comes out. So we get it immediately. Also for April, we had a high CPI print. So, maybe inflation is coming. Let's see, the next one here.
Bell mean again? Just that it's there?
It dings for you as soon as the new release comes out. So
Means
mine,
we set our alarm.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Mine actually reads it in this robotic voice to me, what the print is. It kind of scares me when I'm at home at 6 a.m, but make sure I don't miss it.
That's too much information.
Here, we're showing the spread on the corporate index, spread being the yield you get over treasuries. Behind the,
I can't move the people.
Oh.
Those are Dan's people.
Okay, well, all right.
Who do you want
Behind that.
Move your people.
Yeah.
I don't have.
There you go.
Yeah, okay, so the print on Friday here, that 84 basis points, that is the lowest spread we have seen in, is it 14 years, since 2007. So while we're not getting paid as much on our bonds, the yellow line there shows the duration of the index. So risk is up, yield is down, not exactly what you want to see when you've got money to spend. So that's what's going on in our world right now. The next one there, these are our league tables. This is showing just investment grade corporate bonds. Last year, 2020, was a record-breaking year for bond issuance, $1.7 trillion. Let me make sure I have that right. Priced in the market. So far this year, we've already got 720 billion so far this year. So maybe it slows down, but companies are really liking the low rates and taking advantage. of them. Low rates and low spreads, which is unfortunate for us. Finally, this last tab that
And that list is of what?
so those are broker dealers and how many they have been lead for on new bond issuance. Yeah, so as you can see, JP Morgan has had 12.3% lead on these new bond issuances so far this year. Or last year.
Between wallet share and table share.
That I do not know. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, but I don't know. And finally, Port, as John was saying, this is our main analytics. You might have to hit the little circle. Yeah, there we go. Well, when it populates it, it shows our portfolio against the benchmark. Really cool stuff, really powerful. A lot going on here. And since I haven't seen anyone yawn, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. Pass it off to Kelsey.
What is this?
Yeah, it's so this would be our it's thinking it's very slow because it's so powerful and so much.
The fixed income guys are real loud.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, this just shows us our analytics versus the benchmark. It'll populate eventually. We can always come back.
Could be out to lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
It could be out to lunch.
It might be, yeah.
That's right.
There it goes. Yeah, so you can see, you know, our asset class weight versus benchmark, our duration, contribution to duration, yield. Very cool stuff, but happy to answer any questions. No, I don't want to talk about yeah, so that's negative compared to the benchmark. So we're just slightly under yielding.
Under sovereign, there's supranational. Is that more than one country or what's that?
So the supranationals are like the Mexican oil, Pemex, you know.
They're quasi-government.
Yeah, quasi-government, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
There we go, yeah.
there.
Yeah. We don't hold any, well, since we have a team of 4 people, and I can't get through a board meeting without saying, maybe if we had more people, we would buy sovereign and supranational, but.
So just run through a column or a line. Would you please?
Sure. How about we look at industrial, since that's where all your corporate bonds are going to be.
Okay.
You can open it up and even subdivide it more. But you see, we have 13% weight in industrial corporate, so that's non-financials, non-utilities. Benchmark has 16%, so we're a little underweight there. You'll also see a big point, our option adjusted duration, OAD. We're quite a bit shorter here than we are. We're not buying 30-year corporates. If you think 30 years ago, Sears was a great company. You know? So that's a space we don't typically play in, and that's why we're short there. Our contribution to duration, which is the next section there, is also, you know, smaller because we're underweight and we're underweight duration. So that makes sense.
So why are you underweight duration? What are you waiting for? Waiting for rates to go up?
Yes, well, yes. I think our team view is to be closer to neutral for duration. It's just difficult to find yield in this and lock in that low yield. So while overall we're close, corporates aren't where we're going to be.
So you just underweight corporate duration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't feel the risk return is there. We think there's more risk and less return. And I think Kirsten showed the duration versus spread chart, spread duration, so return risk. Didn't like it.
Yeah, but the benchmark is way out there in duration.
Yeah, and has gone further out over time. And some of that is due to the technicality of duration versus the coupon of a bond. The smaller the coupon, the more duration it has.
Okay, so I get that.
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah.
Yield the worst? We don't want the yield the worst.
Yeah, well, that's what we typically look at when we talk about yield for these, but
So we believe over the long period, this is the return that this portfolio is going to give you. If nothing changes, the yield to worst.
Yep.
So it does to worst what?
So there's optionality in some, but not all securities. In other words, they can be called, or if it is a mortgage, they can pay off faster or slower than you think. There's that optionality. This calculates it to the worst possible outcome that you'll have. Caveat, it's using formulas, Bloomberg's formulas based on their survey of market participants as to the likely worst outcome of a mortgage payoff, not the absolute worst outcome. But in general, that yield, the borrowers are pretty good at giving you the worst yield. So that's about what you're going to get.
No.
and of course, we've got ratings at the end here.
I don't want our yield to go to worst. Just.
Now, why can't we have yield the best? I don't know.
Right.
But even the best is the worst.
With that, I will hand it off to Kelsey to talk about a specific example of how we do things.
Thanks, Kirsten. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'll formally introduce myself since this is my first time presenting for you. I'm Kelsey Gochi. I'm the newest member of the fixed income team. And many of you will recognize me since I worked in the accounting department for a number of years. As members of a cohesive team, we work together and we also bring differing thoughts and ideas for the ultimate benefit of the portfolios. Today, we will demonstrate how we work together to decide whether to purchase a bond. Again, John will be assisting me with the Bloomberg screens. This is an example of a real-life scenario from several weeks ago. We each cover company names on our approved list in various sectors. One of the sectors I cover is food and beverage, which includes Coca-Cola, a name that we all know. We buy most corporate bonds as new issues, and John C. noticed a new issue bond and messaged me about it. He noted that we didn't have any exposure across the portfolios. So John has pulled up the FIW screen, and he will zoom in. So you can see this is the new issue visually on a graph. At the bottom, you can see maturity on the x-axis. And then on the y-axis is the G-spread. We've mentioned a few times today. This is the difference between the yield on a treasury bond and the yield on a corporate bond of the same maturity.
So each one of those blue circles is an existing Coca-Cola bond.
So while John thought that the steeper curve on the 10-year was a benefit in the long run, I was looking more at the 4 to 7 year maturity range, and I thought that the G-spread looked too low. We also discussed strategy related to extending duration and whether that was a benefit or not. From here, we will move to the FA screen, which stands for financial analysis. There's many different metrics in financial analysis, and John has customized this screen on the far left. I'll point out a few of these metrics. You can see in yellow, the top one, EBITDA. That's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. You can see that it's remained relatively flat year over year. Financial leverage is consistently very high, and free cash flow to total debt remains low. So next is an Excel
That's for
spreadsheet.
Coca-Cola,
Yes,
the company.
yes.
Okay.
So these essentially, this could be like their financial statements, but these are
Right.
just individual metrics that we can search for. And this is an Excel spreadsheet that we have for all of the different sectors. We come up with an overall credit metrics score up to 10 points total. Each category includes numerous metrics backing up our research, our notes, and evaluation. Starting at the top, these categories, you can see them on the far left: industry and company risks, management. Continuing down, you can see balance sheet support, support from operations, earnings growth, and ESG for environmental, social, and governance. These categories are scored to produce an overall internally generated score. And you can see John hovering there. We scored Coca-Cola at 0, which is lower than what the rating agencies scored them at the A level. You can see the rating agencies just down there.
So what would a 0 equate to?
Triple B minus. Yeah, and so 10 would be, just happens that it works out nicely, that 10 would be triple A. And it could go negative. I mean, we could score it, these are plus or minus, so it could go negative. If it's negative, we look to unload that bond.
So after John C. and I discussed this new issue, I then brought the analysis to the rest of the fixed income team for any additional thoughts. John Ramosko referenced this spreadsheet to see that we've scored them at 0 and determined that we would need to see significantly more spread in order to buy. So ultimately, we did not purchase this particular bond, even though Coca-Cola is a widely known name and an investment grade credit. Any questions?
So just to sort of recap, basically what your analysis was even though the rating agencies are finding this at this particular time, based upon your knowledge of the market, you're saying we don't agree and we're not going to do this. So, well, that's heartening, because when we weren't looking, there have been times when just the rating was what was used, in STIP at one point, and obviously that caused trouble. So that's good to see.
Internally, is one of you a pessimist and one an optimist, or?
We're fixed income, we're all pessimists.
That's good to hear. Slogan is what? Nothing good ever happens.
Nothing good ever happens.
Well, that's an interesting question, because are your ratings generally lower than the rating rate?
They are now, yeah. So generally, I don't know, Carl, because we only came up with this. This is about 3 or 4 years old. And then, of course, with COVID, that really hit financial metrics, which this is all built on what is dozens of financial of calculations. So with rough economic conditions, those were driven down lower than the ratings.
Okay.
But I would say, yes, probably we are lower.
Okay, and the lower rating doesn't necessarily, the 0, I think, Kelsey, you said, doesn't necessarily mean we wouldn't look at that. It's just that we would want more of a spread.
Right. Right. So we would want a lot more spread. If it was a negative, then we would say we probably don't care what the spread is. Hard pass, somebody said. Yes. And so for instance, so I guess it's probably been a couple of years now, Ford scored out at a negative, and we got rid of the lion's share of the Ford bonds. We also have among the team and John too, we have a handshake agreement that regardless of the score, one of us can take a name off of the approved list.
You get one?
No, you get as many as you want. And the reason that I did, or that we did that.
You could kind of gum everything up now. couldn't
Yeah,
you?
right. You know, somebody's in a bad mood. But the hardest thing to do for an investor is to sell a loser. And so if I bought FedEx and thought it was a really great company, and then they kind of fell out of bed with their aircraft purchases and all that, it's harder for me than to admit that I made a mistake and sell it. It's much easier if Putnam comes down and says, hey, I don't like it. Let's get rid of it. And so take it off the approved list. And so I think there's lots of behavioral investments that make it difficult to achieve excellence. I think the most compelling behavior is selling a loser. And so that's why we've always had the handshake agreement. Anybody can take a name off the list. The converse is not true. You've got to get approval to put a name on the list. That's not a one-person decision.
So it's hard to sell your own loser, but it's easy to sell somebody else's.
Yeah,
loser.
really.
Actually coming celebratory. Hey, I'm kicking him off.
I think it was, hey, loser. Why didn't I think of Hertz? Why didn't Hertz come up at that moment?
Do you look back as individuals and see, is that a recommendation I should have made?
Yes, sure.
And
Yeah. And what you made a mistake, you're gonna make mistakes. I tell the team that we make mistakes, but okay, let's look back and see if there's anything we can take away, what we can learn from that. You know, in the FedEx, that was a little bit difficult to see that management would have taken that kind of flyer on long haul air delivery, but they did. And I should have said, well, that is not part of our investment. I should have said at that point, that's not part of our investment thesis and it's not going to be good. But because I had made the call, I was more, well, you know, I think management will figure it out and it's not that big a deal and really things will be okay. And that's just, you know, the reality of it.
so is there a timeline on you checking that decision or any?
So we're looking at these at least twice a year, where we sit down in a meeting and defend our thesis. And I have some and all of us cover some. Sometimes John's in those meetings too, and he just, you know, basically throws rotten eggs at us, but
But some of his, they are still some of his, isn't it?
right?
We're all winners.
Right.
So the criteria, the spreadsheet that you use, you said you've been using it for 4 years now, right?
Is that about right?
That's about right.
So we ripped it off wholesale from Oak Tree at the time. Since Oak Tree was a high yield manager. And so there are a lot of things that are appropriate for high yield that maybe aren't for investment grade. And we've made some changes over time.
I just was wondering, if you go back in time and look at some of them that maybe didn't score and look at the returns, did that comport? Or was that criteria a good mechanism, good metrics, as opposed to the other scoring mechanisms? And did you go back and play the alternative of, had we done that, what then?
Yeah, we haven't done much of that. I'm hoping at some point to get better attribution that will help us do that. Absent that, you know, would be selecting points in time, which is a little difficult to draw.
I just didn't know if it would help that scoring system as you look at it. Would it change how you score based on, you know, past knowledge of?
Yeah.
So what actually happened versus.
Yeah, it's a good point, and something that we think about a lot is is a particular financial metric, is the cutoff for a 1 versus a 0? Or are we selecting the appropriate cutoff? And so can't really guarantee you that we are, or that there's a solid empirical evidence for that cutoff.
There's always a bit of judgment in it for sure. I just didn't know if it would change how you scored if you were to look back and lay out, had it been different, had we said that would have been a 1 instead of a 2 or whatever, vice versa.
I think that it would. I think there's some value in doing that. You know, time and money type of thing, and hopefully we'll get there.
If you did that though, wouldn't you really be comparing this point in time and the data you input to however many years or months down the road, a different set of data? Because they may, as a company, have turned something around and things would be different. Isn't that how it works? The
Right. So, but-
values you put in?
Yeah, so I would think the more value would be, was that metric right? Was free cash flow to debt the right metric, and was my 0.33 cutoff the right metric?
So you could help tweak your own system.
I mean, I think the biggest thing in fixed income broadly and what this spreadsheet has done for us is avoid the losers. I mean, we're kind of joking. We say there's no, nothing good happens in fixed income, but the best outcome is we get paid and we got our interest payment. So this is really a tool to try to ferret out, okay, who's not a good credit? And Coke was a good example in this instance. Market thinks they're a much better credit than they probably are at this point. And if we can avoid somebody, I mean, not to say Coke's going to default, but there's been other instances of that. If it keeps us honest and we avoid defaults, that makes us win, because just avoiding the default makes you win. And Ford may be one of the better examples of that. A couple of years ago when we basically got out of all of our at least long Ford paper and get a little bit of short stuff, but I think it's all matured at this point, pretty much. So
I think we have a 22 piece, but that's much good.
So, okay, so run that hypothetical out. So Ford makes whatever, big advantage in electric pickups. I mean, when do
that may
you?
happen, but would you want to own a 30-year bond of Ford today, or would you?
Right,
want it to
but
own
do I understand it right? Then John could come and say, let's relook at Ford.
But we would have to do our whole process over again. And
Right.
again, we have to agree to add names to the list.
Right.
And it would have to score out 0 or better, as opposed to a negative.
Right, but once they're off the list, they're not off the list forever.
No, there's any number of ones that we've kind of got on the back shelf. 3M, for instance, that's one that John covers, but it's got more risk. We get no return on it. It's kind of, he looks at it, but it's not on our list now. UPS, was one that I cover, but we're not getting paid to own it, so.
Starbucks outside of pumpkin spice latte season.
Starbucks is always a good.
Yeah.
So you can go back with Kodak or something?
So did you say that there is going to be in the RFP for the custodial bank, some attribution? software or
As an
tool?
optional add-on service, you have just to get a cost analysis of it.
So it's not in the tool, it's just what would it cost if you put it in? So you would know.
It's an option, it's the clear coat. If we were to go buy a truck, we could buy it, but we asked for the price for it. There was no way the CIO was gonna let me issue that RFP without having that on there.
Good calling.
All right, well, it's 5. So
Past 5.
it's 5.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, anything else? It's 5.
It's 5.
Anything else?
Dinner time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have one other thing. What's the number? I had marked. 30. $32 billion in 1,163 transactions. These are 4 busy people, and I thank you. I know we all thank you very much. When I was up there looking at the screen, Bruce tugged at my shoulder and said, "We need a rule that says those 4 can't go anywhere together."
It's the bad
Well,
burrito
that's-
center.
Well, don't worry, they're usually trying to ditch me. So probably that's gonna happen.
Thank you very, very much.
It's great. We have a blast.
All right, with that, we're adjourned. We are meeting again tomorrow morning at 09:30. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, and we're done.
We're done.